Good morning and welcome to the Thursday, October 26th, 2021 meeting of the Lane County Board of Commissioners. We're going to move right into our agenda. Item 1 is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda from commissioners or staff? Seeing none, although the faces on the screen are so little, just shout if I don't see you. I apologize. We now are going to move to an employee recognition, and I believe Mr. Mokrahajski is going to share this recognition with us. We don't hear you well, sir. We agreed to move from ruffled.
Do we have an emergency business that we're doing?
Steve, we had already agreed we were going to move emergency business to number 3 and employee recognition to number 2. However, you're having trouble with your audio.
Okay. So just give me 1 second. Sorry, my computer.
You sound like a solenoid robot from Roger Ramjet.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Chair Bernie,
Yeah.
Chair Bernie, Jim Cheney is on the line if you would like to take emergency business and give Mr. Mokrahajski a moment to work out his audio.
Well, we're certainly juggling number 2 and number 3 on our agenda. We're off to a good start here. Yes.
Yes, we are.
Let's go back to number 2, emergency business. We have Mr. Cheney with us. 2A, Order 21-10-26-07, in the matter of accepting a dedication of right-of-way to be used for a bike pedestrian path on Hunsaker Lane and Beaver Street in Eugene, Oregon. And Mr. Cheney, I understand this is emergency so young people can trick or treat. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Chair Bernie, Commissioners. I'm presenting this today with the county constructed a new bike path extension that extends the left bank, west bank, Willamette River bike path past Delta Sand and Gravel down to from the intersection of Division Avenue and Beaver Street, north on Beaver Street, and then a considerable way down Hunsaker Lane. It's constructed under a temporary easement that was granted by the people who own Delta Sand and Gravel, who are also giving us the right there at no charge. They are giving us the right of way. The contractor completed the project last week and demobilized, and so naturally people are using it because it's much safer than being out in the street. Plus we have Halloween coming up. And so we have a liability issue for the property owner and for us of not actually having a legal right to use that only for construction purposes. So this is brought up because of the fact that it's being used already to regularize it and be able to take a dedication of this right-of-way as road right-of-way, as county road right-of-way along Beaver Street and Hunsaker Lane to clarify the relationship so the county has its appropriate risks and the property owner has its appropriate risks. So it's an emergency item only due to timing and the early completion of the project and the necessity to protect the public.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cheney. Are there any questions for Mr. Cheney? Oh, yes, Commissioner Farr. You're muted, Commissioner.
Thank you. I am prepared for a motion whenever you're ready.
Please.
Then I move Order 21-10-26-07 in the matter of accepting dedication of right-of-way to be used for a bike path, pedestrian path on Hunsaker Lane and Beaver Street in Eugene, Oregon.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Bozovich. Order 21-10-26-07 has been moved by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by Commissioner Bozovich. Are there any questions or comments before the vote is taken? Yes, Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Just a quick question and confirmation, because I believe it was in our packet, but for the folks watching, this was initiated through funds secured through the Safe Routes to School program. Is that right? This project?
Commissioner, yes, that is correct. There are also other safety improvements that have been constructed to the west along Hunsaker Lane. Unfortunately, the right-of-way there is on both sides is residential, and it's a very narrow right-of-way, and it prevents being able to have enough room to easily accommodate bike paths. But new improvements have been placed on there to make it easier and safer for children and bicyclists to go along that part of Hunsaker as well.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Farr.
And to the motion, Chair Bernie, I'd like to point out that Commissioner Bozovic, this is in his district. He has been working on this particular safety corridor for a long, long time, as far back as I can remember, as a matter of fact, as a part of a larger safety, there's a big radius around that area that he has been very instrumental in making sure we move forward. So Commissioner Bozovic, thank you for seconding that. I should have let you make the motion.
Oh, heck. We knew that. That's why he seconded it. Thank you, Commissioner Bozovic. Is there any other discussion to the motion? Then we'll call a vote. All those in favor of Order 21-10-26-07 in the matter of accepting a dedication of right-of-way to be used for a bike pedestrian path on Hunsaker Lane and Beaver Street in Eugene, Oregon, made by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by Commissioner Bozovic. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show that the motion was approved. Order 21-10-26-07, made by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by Commissioner Bozovic, was approved 5 votes to 0. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cheney.
Thank you, Chair Bernie.
We now are on number 3, and I predict that because we're now in the correct order, Mr. Mokrahajski's audio will work just fine.
How does it sound? Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
You know, we've been doing this for 2 years, and I've had no technical difficulties, so I guess it was about time. But thank you, Chair, and Diana Jones and Jim Cheney for shuffling there. Folks are great on their feet moving that around, and I apologize for the mix-up. This is one of
now. That's great.
say that again, Commissioner.
I'm sorry. I just said you sound more like Roger Ramjet now. So clearer.
Okay. So this is one of our favorite things. One of my favorite things. I think many of our favorite things that we get to do here at our board meetings is start the day off by recognizing some of our outstanding employees. And so we have 2 incredible members of our youth services team that we're going to recognize here today. I have a few comments I'll make initially, and then I'm going to pitch it over to Star Felty, our youth services division manager. I know Nia Hayward, who is our supervisor, our supervision supervisor in youth services here, and anyone else who'd like to make comments about these 2 folks. But we have with us, as you can see on your screen, senior juvenile group worker Ron Davis and senior juvenile counselor Amy Hill. And Ron and Amy have been recognized each year. The Oregon Juvenile Department Directors Association recognizes outstanding contributors to youth and families across the state. And Ron was nominated for and has been recognized as the Detention Worker of the Year throughout the state. And Amy was nominated and awarded the Juvenile Justice Professional of the Year for the Southern region. So incredible recognition for 2 of our amazing staff here in Lane County Youth Services. And I just want to make a few comments. They were both nominated by their supervisors. So Ron was nominated by the shift supervisor, Morgan Fitzgerald, and detention supervisor, Suzanne Hughes. And I want to just read some of the comments about Ron. And then I'm going to ask for Star and Nia and anyone else who wants to make some additional comments and add some flavor. But here's some comments about Ron from his supervisors. Ron is known for demonstrating exceptional leadership and service to our youth and our staff. In the last several months, the detention unit has experienced some significant staffing issues. For starters, we were short-staffed. We had no people left to order in. Ron took it upon himself to make a schedule, to recruit and urge people to fill shifts. And this was from his supervisor saying this. As a supervisor, this should be a normally hectic and stressful time, but due to Ron taking charge, I did not have to think twice about staffing. Every shift was covered, many by him. Ron told us not to worry. He would, quote, get it taken care of, and that is exactly what he did. I can't imagine how many lives have changed in the last 10 years of working at youth services. I'm constantly asked by youth, when is Ron going to get here? Is Ron working today? And Ron is our favorite. So those are some comments about Ron and just incredible work. You know, we talk a lot about our core behaviors in Lane County: a passion to serve, a drive to connect, and a focus on solutions. And clearly, Ron demonstrates all of those. And then a couple comments here about Amy Hill. Amy was nominated for the Juvenile Justice Professional of the Year by her supervisor, Nia Hayward. And here's a little of what Nia has to say. Amy is a senior juvenile counselor with Lane County Division of Youth Services. She's worked as a juvenile counselor for 20 years, going above and beyond for the youth and family of Lane County and the division. She has worked with our highest risk youth, been a lead worker in our drug court, and most recently has overseen a rural caseload. Ms. Hill has been a primary trainer for Options to Anger, changing the lives of hundreds of youth, giving them the skills for success. And most recently, she's a trainer for the Parent Project, helping parents gain the skills to address adolescence while in the crossroads of criminality. Her ability to connect with youth, families, and community partners is artful. I love that statement, because I can imagine how artful you have to be in terms of navigating those various challenges. She has planted the seeds in our youth that have left lasting impacts and facilitated change. I love starting our day this way, because, you know, we always have tough and challenging issues, but when we get to recognize people like Ron and Amy, we're reminded of why we're doing this work and the people that are out there every single day working hard, not just doing hard work and challenging work and bringing everything to that, but really adapting. And I love that use of the word artful, being, you know, artfully navigating the challenges of this work, the stepping up and taking on the ownership for solutions and identifying how to really move important work forward. To ultimately, what we do here in Lane County is improve lives. And our team in youth services is focused on improving the lives of young people and families who are struggling, who've gone through some type of a struggle in the criminal justice system. And their work every day is to help repair those lives, not just the young people, but their connections with their families and their community. So I'll stop there. I just get really excited seeing the incredible work that's happening by our folks. And I want to ask Star and Nia and anyone else that we have here from youth services to share some additional comments with you.
I can go first. I also want to acknowledge that Morgan Fitzgerald is here, but she's here as a viewer, and Suzanne is not able to join us today. But I did want to acknowledge that Morgan is present. I just want to say that I am so pleased and privileged to be able to recognize both Amy and Ron for the exceptional work that they do. I want to thank you both for your dedication and commitment to improving the lives of the youth and families we work with, and to enhancing the health and safety of our community. I believe fundamentally in this work. I think it's very powerful work, and you both do it so well. So thank you so much. I'm very grateful.
I'm going to defer. Nia, are you turning your mic on, or I? Okay. I just couldn't tell who all wanted to speak, and I won't take tons of time. But I did also want to take a moment to appreciate in particular that the passion to serve and the driven to connect. And I think it's important for the board to know both Amy and Ron are long-time serving professionals in youth services. And one of the stories that comes to mind when I think about Ron is on one of my job shadows. I had a chance to talk to Ron a little bit about the generations of children and families who have come through youth services and have really connected with him in ways that, again, as Star said, it's really about powerful change. So it's not just people who ask, when's Ron going to be here? He's my favorite. But I think it's that sense of how much Ron, and I know this is true for Amy too, believe in the youth who come through, and the youth feel that, and it matters as they walk through what oftentimes is the hardest time in their life, and are able to get that genuine support, accountability, and skills from our staff. So thank you, Amy and Ron. And Nia, I'm going to defer to you and give you a chance before we turn it back to the chair if you wanted to add anything.
I just want to say that it's been my privilege and honor to work with both you and Ron over the last 2 decades. I have learned so much from you, and you guys so eloquently help our youth in our community every day and going above and beyond. So kudos to you both.
Chair, I think we'll turn it over to you. And then, of course, we always give the employees the opportunity to have the last word or rebut any, respond to the comments that have been made. So we'll turn it over to you, Chair, for any additional comments from commissioners.
This is like that show, The Last Word. Is that right? That's being reserved for our recipients today. Apparently, giving it to the chair is like this weird thing, you guys. So this is the opportunity for commissioners really to thank you. And I believe Vice Chair Farr will lead that off.
Thank you, Chair Burning. The last word will echo for a long, long time. The work you do is not only groundbreaking, it is resilient. So I just wanted to point out that Ron and Amy, your work has paved the way to something that's going to happen later in the meeting today. We'll be accepting a $3.5 million award from HUD for youth services. And this is an award that is very competitive. We wouldn't have gotten it without the tremendous work that is done in youth services and the work that you have helped pave the way for. So thank you for that. This goes on for a long, long time, the work that you do. So I appreciate that. I love the fact that you are our favorite artful navigators. That's what I'm going to refer to you as. So and very briefly, Nia, I want to call out your name really quickly for your early work on equity and access. I think you and I started working on that about 7 years ago with Mo Young. So your entire department is stellar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners? Commissioners Buck and Trieger, you choose who goes next. You raised your hands in unison. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I want to express my extreme gratitude that you've chosen to work at Lane County all these years. All your collective impact just radiates through the entire community. Clearly, you're a mentor to all the kids that come through the system, but you're also a mentor for all the staff that are there as well. And that is just a huge collective impact. So thank you so very much, and congratulations on your awards.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you all. In the interest of brevity, I will just say I echo everything that's been said before, but I want to specifically call out how extra challenging your work has been in the last year and a half or so with the pandemic. All of the work of Lane County was made harder. All of the work of every worker everywhere was made harder, but particularly the additional stresses placed on the youth and families that you're serving, and then your ability to connect in this really challenging environment. So I just want to add an extra layer of appreciation for not only doing difficult and incredibly important work year in and year out, but the special extra challenges that I can only imagine you faced in continuing to do your good work in this last year and a half to 2 years. So thank you so much.
Hey, that got a smile. Yeah, yeah. Yes, Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you, and I want to thank both of these people. They've just done an incredible job there in youth services. Youth services is a really important function. I remember adding an extra nickel onto the public safety levy specifically just to make sure we could keep funding youth services. And Ron, I think we may have met in one of the tours I've been around youth services. I've been on several, but it's been several years. And I think as the pandemic eases and there's possibility, and I'm fully vaxxed, it's probably time for another tour. It's been a while. It's been at least 2 years since I've been inside the facility. So congratulations on the awards. Well deserved. In fact, you can almost give an award to every staff member in youth services. You guys do amazing work. And I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Davis and Ms. Hill, I don't know you well. I want to share that I used to work in youth services. It was some of the most gratifying work I ever did. In fact, met Jesse Jackson in South Chicago with then his Operation Push, which stood for People United to Save Humanity, around dealing with mental health issues, especially with low income youth that were exhibiting patterns of violence and vandalism in the school setting. So while not having the honor or opportunity to work with you, I understand both the nature of the work, the personal connections that are made that literally change lives and last a lifetime. I know that I was always frustrated because I was always looking for more institutional change, right? And sometimes that was a little more elusive than personal abilities to connect with people. But for you to be where you are and do what you do and have the respect of your peers and the respect of your clients, I think speaks absolute volumes. So kudos to you. Thank you for your work. It is hugely, largely Mother Teresa work, right? People don't know what you're doing. It's not that they appreciate everything, but you know what you're doing, and your clients know what you're doing, and our children know what you're doing. So thank you so much for that. And according to Mr. Mokrahajski, you both have the last word. I don't know if Ms. Hill or Mr. Davis, you wish to say anything.
You don't have to, but you're welcome to share any comments.
I appreciate everyone's comments, and I appreciate everybody who works at youth services, because this is a really challenging task that we have, but the rewards outweigh the deficits, and I appreciate everybody's efforts here to give the youth of Lane County the best possible chances they can in making a positive future and a change for the better.
Thank you, sir.
Ron and I accept this on behalf of everybody here, because this is a team and we can't do it without everybody. So thank you very much, and we appreciate it. It's uncomfortable, I think, at times, because this is just what we do, and it feeds our souls and is the work that picked us. So thank you.
I will always remember your statement, Ms. Hill, that it's the work that picked you. Thank all of you so much for your daily heroism. Now, get back to work now. Thank you very much. Commissioners, we are now on item 4, public comment. To the public watching this meeting, it's hard to make these transitions, forgive me. To the public watching this meeting, when you registered to watch in this virtual format, you were registered in our system as attendees. Attendees are webinar participants who are audience members viewing the meeting. Your microphone and your webcam are automatically muted as in attendees, but at this time in the meeting, we are opening the public comment section. So if you wish to participate in public comment, please raise your virtual hand to be recognized by pressing the hand icon. When public comment begins, our meeting organizer, Diana Jones, will call names. When your name is called, you will be given up to 3 minutes to make public comment. When your 3 minutes are up, I'll let you know. We'll give you a few seconds to finish, and you will then go back to muted status, and the next name will be called. You may then continue to watch the webinar as long as you want. We're going to try and give everyone who wishes to present public comment an opportunity to do so. Ms. Jones, at this time, are there people that would like to make public comment?
Thank you, Chair Barney. Yes, I do see some hands raised. So at this time, we will open up public comment for the October 26th board meeting. First is Daniela Marino. Daniela, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public testimony. We will follow Daniela with Chris Warren.
Good morning, everyone. Daniela Marino here. To the Lane County Youth Services, gratitude for your work. It looks like you're making really awesome ripples. Rock on. Board, thank you for listening. As you've been listening weekly, thank you so much. I'm here again today because my soul, my mind, and my conscience call me to do so. I feel deeply that I have a responsibility of showing up. There is thought, there's research and meaning behind each of my words. And sorry to change the vibe, but this is, I'm on a mission here. So today's comment is called the Autumn of the Big Lie. Here we go. This vaccine circus is the largest drug deal of history. This administration's mandates are illegitimate and unconstitutional. The FDA and the CDC are making decisions irresponsibly based on short-term data. Fauci has been playing with words regarding his involvement with the gain-of-function research. COVID-19 numbers such as positive cases and deaths have been inflated. Pharma is getting richer. Hardworking people are fired from their jobs for not wanting the vaccine. HR departments are playing God and judge, but our streets are full of homeless. Big tech is censoring free speech. Truth seekers are accused of spreading misinformation. This administration is overly spending our tax dollars and still failing. Inflation is saying hello to all of us when we get gas and groceries. And my body, my choice only applies when convenient. If a Black Lives Matter flag is burned, it's bad. But if many North American flags are burned, it's okay. And requiring proof of vaccination is okay, but requiring an ID to vote is racist. The COVID-19 survival rate is about 99%, but CNN and France tell you it's deadly. Nordic countries suspend the use of Moderna vaccines based on high risks, and Biden brings them all to the US. Children tackle COVID-19 like champs, but pharma can't wait to shoot the vaccine up their arms. Vaccine efficacy keeps dropping. Vaccinated people still get sick and transmit it, but you're told that the vaccines are the only way out. Adverse effects are unreported, but there's still too many. The mainstream media show is falling apart. Too many lies have been said, and we have it all on video, downloaded and archived. Do you like this vaccine? Are you afraid to die from COVID-19? Go ahead and take 20 shots, but don't push this on others. All I'm asking is, do what you will with yourself. What I do is none of your business. Let me remind you that the government of the United States belongs to we the people. Elected officials work for we the people. We the people tell the government what goes and what doesn't. It's not the other way around. The unnecessary massive application of this experimental vaccine and the coercion currently taking place is a very serious human rights issue that we the people will seek justice for within the system of law. The power structure of pharma, tech, media, and government is finally exposed. Please do not apply vaccine mandates in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Chris Warren. Chris Warren will be followed by Tressa Beaver. Chris, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment.
Okay, am I here today? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Last week we could not. Today we're going to knock off this crap that COVID is all about science. This is about money and control. If this was about science, the stupid rule about you must wear a mask when you walk to your table at a bar or restaurant, but you can take it off when you sit down would be gone. There's no science that proves COVID hovers 4 feet above the ground, so you're safe when you sit. If this was about science, natural immunity, which over 50 million Americans have, would be accepted in lieu of a jab. If this was about science, there would be liability for manufacturers. Did you guys know that Pfizer just recalled sunscreen and Johnson & Johnson got sued over baby powder, both because they cause cancer? Sunscreen and baby powder. But you want to allow 5-year-olds to get an experimental gene therapy shot with 9 months of history from these same companies. A history with a bunch of negative effects that are being covered up and censored by media and big tech. Seriously? How long has baby powder been on the market before the lawsuits began? 50 years? 75? Maybe 100? If this was a huge national emergency, why did Kate Brown give from August 13th until October 18th 2 solid months for people to get the jab to keep their jobs? 2 months of mingling with the public. 2 solid months. Biden's mandate hasn't even gone into effect yet. So if this was such a huge emergency, how many people have been allowed to die in the last 60 days? And why? If this was about science, why is the post office exempt? The only agency that literally goes to every single address every single day. Section 564 on the FDA website states that emergency authorization can only be applied when, quote, there are no adequate, approved, or available alternatives, unquote. We know that hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, monoclonal antibodies, zinc, azithromycin, vitamin C, vitamin D, various combinations work for many people in many other countries around the world. But these are all cheap. This is about money and control and power. So the bottom line is, if some of you people, if there are no pushback, we can only assume that A, you are willfully ignorant of the information, B, or you knew the information and refused to acknowledge it, or C, you're being influenced by big pharma money, just like Kate Brown, who's accepted thousands and thousands and thousands of big pharma campaign contributions. None of these are acceptable.
Your 3 minutes are done. If you could wrap it up in a few seconds, that'd be great.
Okay, know that we are watching you guys, and if you vote the wrong way on COVID mandates, we'll target you guys for defeat very publicly and very loudly.
Thank you for your public comment. I will now unmute Tressa Beaver's microphone, and you may begin your public comment at this time. Once I unmute Tressa's microphone, I do not show anyone else has their hand raised for public comment. If you would like to give public comment, please raise your hand now. Tressa, I am unmuting your microphone and you may begin your public comment. Tressa, I show you are self-muted.
Okay, can you hear me? Great. Thank you all for your contribution to our community. I would like to believe that your hearts are in the right place and that you took this position as county commissioners to be the voice of reason for our communities, for the people that you serve. It is of great concern to me that these vaccine mandates are being rolled out and considered for our young children. 5 to 11, 11 to 17. No, all of these people, including those 20 to 60, have natural immunity, and even beyond. I mean, even the 70, 80-year-olds, I actually know some who have had COVID and have recovered without hospitalization. that these vaccines are even being considered on the docket to be approved for our children is completely unacceptable. There is a 99.98% recovery rate from COVID. This is a flu. This may be a little bit greater than the flu. My question is, if there were labs in Wuhan, China, or even in the US that are creating these viruses, is it acceptable to have them running? We need to shut those labs down, hold these people accountable, and stand up for our human rights, our constitutional human rights. I am a business owner. I refuse to live a lie or to promote a lie, and I will not stand down. And I accept the responsibility of educating the public about our natural immunity and ways to protect ourselves from COVID-19 or any other virus, especially those that are generated from a lab. We need to shut these labs down. We need to hold these people accountable.
Your 3 minutes are up, so if you could wrap it up in a few seconds, that'd be great.
Great. We need to shut these labs down, hold these people accountable, and stand for the people. Do not allow our government to administer, or our schools to administer, vaccines to our children. Period. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Harry Sanger. Mr. Sanger, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment.
Good morning, Chair Burney, Lane County Commissioners, and County staff. Thank you for providing a forum for public comment today. The Lane County Public Health Mission is to promote and protect the long-term health and well-being of individuals, families, and our community. The COVID response has been one short-term knee-jerk reaction after another when it comes to seizing power and issuing advisories, and a slow, tenuous crawl to restore freedom and liberty to county residents. Despite belittling comments from commissioners about the role and jurisdiction of county decisions, it is well supported that you can direct public health sentiment through your actions, or in the case of removing a documented, racially biased mandate, inactions. County administrator used this very logic in the push to mandate vaccines for county employees, to be a leader and set an example for other agencies and businesses in Lane County. The entire response to COVID seems to be in violation of our public health mission, ignoring long-term mental health issues, the financial well-being of our community, and failing to assign appropriate risk identified early in the pandemic that severe cases of COVID-19 are primarily in those over 70 or with other serious health complications. Blanket mask and vaccine mandates were unheard of prior to March 2020, but somehow became the orthodox reaction instead of focusing efforts on vulnerable populations and not treating the healthy as though they were infected by default. Vaccination was supposed to change the default back to healthy, but over the summer, this goalpost shifted again. Now, many want to push vaccines with unknown long-term effects on children, despite almost no risk from severe COVID infection. To put this in perspective, there have been 5 pediatric COVID deaths in Oregon since March 2020, compared to deaths attributed 80 perinatal conditions, 43 congenital anomalies, 33 motor vehicles, 28 suicides by firearms, 27 SIDS, 25 suicides by suffocation, 22 neoplasms, 17 respiratory disease, 17 nervous system disease, 14 suffocation, 10 drowning, and 14 unclassified. Last week, Commissioner Traeger read words from Dr. Ludke about death being important, but not the only negative outcome. There are others such as life-disrupting COVID hospitalizations. But a recent study conducted by a team of researchers from Harvard Medical School, Tufts Medical Center, and the Veterans Affairs Healthcare System found that roughly half of all hospitalized patients showing up on COVID data dashboards in 2021 may have been admitted for another reason entirely, or only had a mild presentation of disease. If only one death is too many, why are we continuing to downplay the VAERS statistics presented here on a weekly basis? One thing I have seen in the vast informational stores of the internet is that claims of large sporting events being super spreaders has not come to fruition. Since Outson started hosting games, we have not seen large localized breakouts. Weekly case rate peaked the week of August 16th and steadily declined with home football games starting September 4th. One thing the first commenter mentioned is many have lost their jobs due to vaccine mandates. The bigger unspoken horror here is that many individuals who did not want the vaccine felt coerced to get it because of the need for their jobs to support their families. I've spoken to multiple school employees who went home crying because they violated their beliefs to retain employment. This should never be a decision that an American is forced to make. Finally, I would like to recognize the county for positive response to public comment. Thank you for updating county statistics to more accurately reflect the information being presented in regard to breakthrough cases, clarifying the case statistics not considered breakthrough represent both unvaccinated and not fully vaccinated. This is a minor distinction, but lends important context.
You're well over your 3 minutes, so if you could somehow wrap it up in a few seconds, that'd be great.
Yeah, this is my last point. Thank you, Chair Bernie. This is a minor distinction, but lends important context to the data being presented. So thank you again for hearing community concerns and showing a willingness to work with your constituents.
Thank you for your public comments. At this time, I do not show any other hands raised. So if you did register for public comment and you have not had a chance to speak but wish to do so, please raise your hand now. And Chair Bernie, I do not see any additional hands raising, so I will return the meeting to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for all of those who provided testimony and chose to exercise your democratic right of expression to government entities. Sincerely, thank you. This is the time for commissioners to provide a response to public comments and or other issues and remonstrances. Would any commissioners like to speak? Yes, Vice Chair Farr.
Thank you. I delayed a moment to see if others would like to speak first. Chair Bernie, I have two things very quickly. One, I forwarded a letter to each of the commissioners that I received yesterday from Association of Oregon Counties. It is regarding asking the legislature to immediately allocate $2.5 million to expand capacity of our existing statewide community mediation system to meet eviction case demands across Oregon. This is a little bit different than the letter that we talked about last week. This is specifically asking for money for mediation, legislature to appropriate money for mediation. I'll give everybody a chance to read it, and then maybe later in the meeting, perhaps during items from commissioners, Chair Bernie, I will ask if you are willing to sign that letter on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners and ask for head nods on that. In the meantime, I will, if we don't as a board, I will sign this letter. So you all have a copy of that letter in your inbox. Don't rush to read it right now, but it is forwarded by me from Andy Smith. The second thing I'd like to talk about is youth services. We were talking about that significantly as we honored some of our professionals in youth services. And I want to mention that Commissioner Bozovich only just barely brushed on the nickel that was added to the initial public safety levy. That nickel compounded through the years since that original public safety levy passed has really produced a great deal of money to directly into our youth services that allow for some of the things that happen in youth services to happen in fact, and allows for staffing that we would otherwise not have had if not for Commissioner Bozovich's nickel. And that was Commissioner Bozovich that drove that nickel. And I want to thank you again for that, Commissioner Bozovich. Thank you.
Before I call another commissioner, I would just like to say that we do have a protocol for emergency letters where a commissioner will forward that to the rest of the board to review during the lunch break. And Commissioner Farr's letter was sent to us at 9:01 a.m. if that helps you get to it over the break. Thank you, Commissioner Farr. Anyone else? Seeing no other commissioners that would like to respond to public comments or have other items? Last chance. Okay. Okay, then we are, again, thank you everyone that provided testimony. And since everyone's testimony related to COVID, you might want to stay tuned and with us, listen to the report from our professional medical teams on this issue. We are now going to recess the meeting of the Lane County Board of Commissioners. We are going to convene a joint meeting of the Board of Health with the Board of Commissioners. If you look at that agenda for this meeting, number one on this is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to this agenda? Seeing none, is there any emergency business attendant to this meeting? Again, seeing none, we are now on item 3A of this joint meeting, COVID-19 response and recovery. And we have with us Mr. Moskrahysky, Mr. Adams, Dr. Warren, and whoever else I didn't catch. Mr. Moskrahysky, if you would start, please.
Thank you, Chair. And based on the board's direction from last week, we're going to start having updates, COVID-19 updates every other week. So we'll have one today, and then in 2 weeks, and we'll be on that schedule for the foreseeable future. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Adams to provide you with the update. And Mr. Adams, Dr. Warren, and I are available for questions.
You are muted, Mr. Adams, so don't get too into it yet.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Birdie. And let me just repeat, good morning, Chair Birdie and Commissioners. I'm delighted to be with you this morning to provide the update. So we continue to see, as I show, this is the rolling 7-day rate per 100,000. We continue to see the steady decline, a little bit of noise in the longer term data, but certainly this is moving in the right direction and continues to move. So we're very pleased that we've had a number of days in which we've only had double-digit reports of new cases, but other days we jog up a little bit. Just within the last 24 hours, we've had 142 new cases reported, bringing us to a total of 28,110 cases. We're currently tracking 493 individuals as currently infectious between days 1 and 10. That's an increase in 40 in the last 24 hours. Our hospital numbers have been up and down. We're currently reporting 52 Lane County residents. That is a change of 29 in the last 24 hours in hospital. 11 of those individuals are in ICU beds. That is a decline of 6 from yesterday's report. And in the last 24 hours, we've had 6 new reported deaths. So that is brings us to a total of 303 deaths in total. To put this into the longer term perspective, you'll note in the right-hand side of the epi curve, just prior to that gray box there, that gray bar, which is kind of the zone of uncertainty as those reports for those days continue to come to us. We're now at a point where we're seeing on a daily basis the coming into the range of the peak of our highest daily case reports back in the December-January timeframe from when we had that winter surge of last year. We continue to be cautiously optimistic as we move forward. Many of the measures that Wayne County residents have taken for masking and greater protection, social distancing, attempting to provide their dead level best to arrest the spread of COVID is working. We're happy to be able to report that news. I certainly think it's important to try to kind of do a little bit of future prognostication for you this morning as we are moving to a every other week check-in for you. I'm presenting to you 3 data points, one from the CDC and 2 from the Oregon Health and Science University. That shows perhaps some degree of continued optimism that we will continue in the near future down this curve in the same trajectory. The upper graph shows in 2 different panels the modeled future for the next 2.5 weeks from CDC. So the panel on the upper left, that's a bit more colorful, shows the results of individual model runs that are coming from different research institutions across the country. The panel on the upper right with the reddish color shows the ensemble run of that current trajectory. So this takes into account a number of different factors, but this suggests that by mid-November, we will be at or near 100 cases per 100,000, which brings us out of the highest level of risk in the CDC scale and into the range of substantial spread, which is between 50 and 100 cases per 100,000. Turning a little bit more to some modeling conducted by OHSU just late last week. The figure on the lower left is a herd model. So this is a colorful chart. The orange represents those individuals in Region 3, and of course this includes Curry, Coos, Douglas, and Wayne County. Represents the percentage of the total population that is susceptible to COVID-19. That obviously declines over time. Blue represents the vaccinated percentage of the total public. Gray represents those who, it's a modeled estimated percentage of those who are both vaccinated and have been infected either prior to or after vaccination. And green is those who over time, over the entirety of the pandemic, have had a COVID-19 infection. So you notice the line here, which represents the current date. And the current estimates are that we have, as of now, 24% of our population of these 4 counties is being that remains susceptible, 43% vaccinated. Vaccinated and with a prior infection, 8%, and then 23% of the population of those 4 counties having had a prior infection. So this has been talked about. The statewide graphic has been noted in the news, and OHA epidemiologists have suggested that as we get into December statewide, Oregon may be approaching some degree of herd immunity, and hopefully that will steel us as we move forward into the future. The final graph here on the lower right is the actual hospital bed count that are occupied by COVID patients. And the black line is the modeled history. So the first feature to note is how well the model has fit the actual observed curve. And you'll notice that where the red stops here is the current moment. We have likely seen across Region 3 the end of this rather precipitous decline of hospital bed utilization, and will experience over the next few months a slower decline in hospital beds, returning, according to this model, back to summer levels that we saw somewhere right around the first of the year. I think this gives us some degree of hope that we've seen the worst of the pandemic thus far. The measures that the public more broadly, and certainly the health, public health and safety recommendations that this board has issued are working and helping to bring us back to a degree of normality. Finally, I want to focus a little bit on vaccination efforts. Specifically, this is the data captured from the OHA visualization as of yesterday. We saw 980 people step forward for their first shot over the course of the past week since I last presented to you. We're now at 66.2% of our entire population having received at least their first dose, and 74.5% of our eligible 12 plus population as of today. We are currently at about 86,260 individuals estimated who in Wayne County who are eligible for vaccine, who have yet to move forward in that direction. As we zoom into the spatial distribution of vaccine coverage, we continue to see steady and incremental increases in some of the targeted zip codes, specifically 97402 remains a major focus for us, as is the, sorry, just moving my cursor here, as is the 97478 zip code specifically. Finally, on the vaccination front, today is a notable day. The FDA's Advisory Committee on Vaccines is hearing testimony from Pfizer and from others regarding the authorization of the Pfizer vaccine, the pediatric formulation for individuals 5 to 11 years of age. We anticipate that will move forward from the advisory committee today, and that then moves over into the venue of CDC next week. We believe that we will be seeing the opportunity to offer vaccine to parents of individuals, those children 5 to 11, as soon as the week of November 8th. So this week, as we meet, we are gearing up for the Moderna boost doses. We have ongoing operations at the Lane Event Center, both the walk-in facility within the auditorium, and we are just opening today a small drive-through facility really designed for individuals with specific needs, where a walk-in clinic doesn't necessarily meet their needs. So we're very pleased to be able to provide that service to individuals. Our Moderna appointments are reserved pretty heavily. We anticipate a heavy week of Moderna boost dose activity. Johnson & Johnson as well is eligible for boost doses 2 months after receiving that first shot. Moderna is not unlike Pfizer. 6 months after one received a second shot of their initial primary series. And the stronger recommendations obviously are for individuals 65 years or older, individuals 18 years and older who have a underlying health condition, and individuals who are at greater risk due to a workplace or a living arrangement setting that puts them at higher risk. So we anticipate over the past week, we've seen about 800 doses a day across all providers in Lane County. So the majority of the vaccination activity has been focused on boost doses, and that will continue this week and next. The week following, we will be pivoting and focusing our efforts on pediatric vaccinations and building the capacity to meet that demand. We believe that we will see something between 8,000 and 10,000 kids between 5 and 11 seek vaccination as soon as they possibly can. We think that that's likely to be within the first couple of weeks of that vaccine becoming available. And we are scaling up our operations to be able to provide vaccination access in an equitable fashion. We're working with our CBO partners to identify specific pediatric clinics that will be most accessible and welcoming. We will be focusing some of our walk-in clinics to meet that pediatric demand as well. The drive-through facility will be available for families whose kids are going to be better in that setting. We're working with schools to identify specific school-based clinics that can be open in the evening and afternoon hours after school to be able to provide vaccines in that setting as well. And then finally, identifying specific clinical settings where we can offer vaccines. So our intent is to try to provide as many settings as possible to make vaccine available to those families who wish to have their children vaccinated. Finally, I would note that we continue to work with our pediatric partners. Our practices around town are already scaling up efforts to offer weekend and evening clinics, and we'll be providing vaccinations outside of the traditional kind of checkups that they offer in their daily operations, as well as understanding our pharmacy partners for being able to provide vaccinations. So we anticipate vaccine supply for pediatric vaccinations will be adequate to meet our needs for the first couple of weeks. That will be a higher period of demand, and are pre-positioning our resources to be able to meet that demand when it occurs. Chair Bernie, that is my comments and update for the morning.
I want to thank you, Mr. Adams. This time you only had 3 things you said after you stated "and finally." So, a lot of information. Before we have commissioner questions, Dr. Warren, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Chair Bernie. I would like to say I note that we continue to hear that we are overreacting to this pandemic, or perhaps taking it more seriously than it deserves, and that and I do agree that death is not the best measure necessarily of the impact of this disease on our community. And I really appreciate the comments from Dr. Ludke. I think that was right on last week. I do want to note, though, that COVID-19 is the 2nd leading cause of death in September in the United States. So to say that that it has not having an impact is, for me, I don't know how you can square that with the data, frankly. Things may look a little bit different here in terms of death and morbidity specifically, and that's because we have taken those non-pharmaceutical interventions, or NPI, as they're called, of masking, hygiene, distancing, all of those measures. People have taken those very seriously. And in the places where we see that in combination with vaccination, we have lower death rates. That's the way it works. So I want to appreciate that. Also, that non-pharmaceutical interventions are nothing new. They didn't just show up in March. We've been practicing non-pharmaceutical interventions for many years in response to many infectious diseases. I think that's all I really want to say. I do think it's important to be really clear about the impact of COVID-19. Thank you, Chair Bernie.
Thank you, Doctor. Commissioners, any questions or comments for our healthcare representatives with us today? Yes, Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Just appreciate, as always, the update and that particular comment from Mr. Adams about feeling like we are on our way to the so-called herd immunity, although that is still a bare bones minimum in terms of vaccination rate to get us there. It's to my mind by no means quite the ideal. So cautiously optimistic, but as we've learned too, right, variants are the variable. And we can only imagine if a year ago, I'm losing track of time, we had taken some of the measures that we've taken since the Delta variant shortly before it, well in advance of that, we'd be in a very different place today. So my question is there anything on the horizon that's giving us concern in terms of other variants that may be headed our way, or other factors sort of outside of the current status of infection rate, the current nature of the virus that we're dealing with, supply of vaccine, and so on?
Chair Bernie, Commissioner Trieger, I think that as we continue to watch the evolution of COVID-19 itself, I think certainly I think folks are watching this Delta sub lineage that is emergent in the UK. We're seeing an increase in cases and hospitalizations there as they have begun to rapidly reopen the economy and activity on a daily basis. I think that is an issue of some concern. We've seen reporting just within the last couple of days that has been detected in 4 different states and the District of Columbia here in the U.S. I think that is the one that we're currently watching most closely. What I understand, and this is from press accounts versus looking specifically at hard data, is that has it's 10% more transmissible than the original Delta variant that we are just getting past. So I think we continue to watch that. Our hope is that we've had a very high case rate lately. So as you know, natural immunity is protective for a relatively short period of time, 4 to 5 months on average, and then it begins to wane more rapidly, certainly, and that's why vaccinated protection is more robust and longer lasting. So given that, if you compare our epi curve to, say, the Portland metro area, for instance, their winter surge last year was essentially equivalent to the Delta surge. And as we saw, we just had the almost half of our cases have occurred just since August 1st. So we think that we have locally more natural immunity that is probably more durable for the shorter period of time. Hopefully, and this is me with my fingers and toes crossed, that if this Delta subvariant washes through, that we will have a high degree of herd protection here. That could hopefully get us through the winter months when we know we're most at risk. Other issues appear to be well managed. Testing supplies and access remains strong. Our test positivity rate is down to about 4%, which is a really good indicator. And I think the only issue that we have that we're watching really closely in terms of vaccine supply chain is availability of that PEDVAX, which we know will be a little bit constrained early on. But the numbers that we're seeing from OHA that have been allocated to Wayne County give us, we will have over 5,000 doses within that first week, and we feel very comfortable with that allocation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. And I just want to echo Dr. Warren. I just have to say that the characterization of COVID-19 as just the flu has been something I've been arguing against with people from the very beginning. It is definitely not just the flu. One, it's not the same microorganism, but two, it clearly has a much higher mortality rate and a much higher hospitalization rate, and for particularly vulnerable people is an extremely severe disease. So I don't want to play that down. And I also, again, want to encourage people that vaccination is the best defense against the disease, particularly those in vulnerable groups. And I'm fully vaccinated. That all said, as I look at data, and I wish I could have found that forecast about herd immunity on my own, because it was very difficult to read on screen as one of 4 screenshots. I wish that had been a separate slide by itself. We've had 28,000 cases in Lane County. Of course, a few of those have been breakthrough, but not too many. We've got 17,000 people in progress to get vaccinated and had 235,000 that are fully vaccinated, adding up to about 280,000 of our population. We are reaching that point of herd immunity here in Lane County. If you look at natural immunity with also vaccinated immunity. When do we transition from calling this a pandemic to an endemic disease like the flu, where people get boosters every year and it becomes part of society?
Chair Bernie, Commissioner Bozovich, I think that is really the $100,000 question, as they say. Yes, the transition point as folks are really beginning to consider this is recognizing that COVID-19 becomes endemic, so that it is like seasonal flu and it is like other infectious diseases that are within the population. They will circulate, and they are to some extent being addressed with public health measures as we go, but folks are moving back toward a degree of normalcy. It is the thing that I think everyone in the COVID-19 response here in Wayne County is so very keen to see, that we get to a place where this becomes a more programmatic type management issue over time. We think that we will be sorry, I'm getting some feedback. I think we will begin to see that as we get through this winter. I think that there are a number of factors on the horizon here. We're seeing remarkable breakthroughs in the way in which hospitals and practitioners are able to treat disease. We're so much better at that than we were just even a few months ago. We have a new antiviral coming on the market, likely in the December timeframe from Merck, Molnupiravir, if I could say it. But nonetheless, this is an oral antiviral, the so-called Tamiflu of COVID-19, that has shown in its phase 3 trials a 50% reduction in death and hospitalizations amongst those who were able to access this. The thought is that this will become available in pharmacies for primary care providers to be able to prescribe early in one's infectious period. We're seeing more widespread testing as the administration is trying to push out home test kits so that we get just greater coverage of testing. And then, of course, we're getting into the final push of the vaccine rollout and making it available to all age groups ultimately. And that will happen just within the next few months. So my sense is that, and I've been foolish for wrong predictions in the past, is that we are beginning to enter into that end game here for this pandemic. That is my deepest, profoundest hope.
Commissioner Boza, if I may, I think that Mr. Adams' answer to your question was that's the right question. He doesn't know. But things are moving in that direction. Breathe through, Commissioner.
Yeah, I just want to tack on to this. I was able to pull up that model herd chart separately here, and it speaks to whether or not there's a real need to go to the level of government enforcement of vaccine mandates. We're getting there without them, and I think that they are actually having a negative impact on part of our general public's resistance to getting vaccinated. And I think something the board needs to rethink as they look at those herd immunity numbers and also understanding human nature and behavior, and watching us have to force people through threat and coercion of their livelihoods to get a vaccine that we're asking a lot of the general public to get voluntarily is not a successful strategy in my book. And once again, I'll just remind the board that maybe we really ought to rethink. And it's been another week and no other local agency has implemented an employee vaccine mandate that we were supposed to be providing leadership for 2 months ago. So just saying.
Thank you, Commissioner. I saw Vice Chair Farr. Did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Chair Burney. Just for a quick question, Steve. Regarding booster shots, booster vaccinations for the general population in Lane County, do we provide information online that people can access where they can determine when and how to get their booster shot?
Chair Burney, Vice Chair Farr, yes. Our COVID-19 website, it's linked to the county's homepage. lanecounty.org is the quickest way to get there. Just follow the links to COVID-19 and vaccines, and you will see all the information about eligibility for boost shots, as well as where to get boost shots and how to sign up for an appointment.
Thank you, Steve. I threw you a softball because I knew you knew the answer, and I already did too. So we just go to our Lane County website, follow the links, and it will get you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Buck, anything?
I'll just add that I too really wanted to see those graphics bigger on the one page where I had 4. So in the future, if they could be larger, so I could read them, I could slightly understand them from your verbal description. But it'd be easier if they were a little bit bigger. Thank you for all your work.
Chair Burney, Commissioner Buck, I'd be delighted to follow up with larger graphics for each of you. I will send them out to you this afternoon.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to reiterate the point that Commissioners Bozovich and Buck made about that. My eyesight is worse than theirs, and they still couldn't read it. I found it very frustrating, and I actually was questioning some of the statements you were saying, especially about the color chart. So anything that would enable us to follow what you were saying would be appreciated, not just sending them to us, but in your presentations. We're not going to hear from you until I believe it's November 9th, which is getting into the beginning of the middle of November. You've made predictions and speculations based on data about what the middle of November may portend. And so I think that's going to be really important to be clear. I have a question also, 2 more points. On the chart that you currently have up, this is the zip code 97478. You said there's been incremental progress. Am I correct? Isn't that exactly the same vaccination number you had a week ago for that area?
I believe that's updated as of yesterday.
Well, updated, but I'm saying even updated, is that not exactly the same number you showed us last week?
I don't have last week's presentation in front of me, so I don't recall if it was 58.5 last week.
Okay. Well, this is pure memory, which you're going to beat me on, but my memory says it was, and I was paying attention, and that's where I live. And that, if that's the case, that's not incremental progress. So I'd be very interested in that. The only other thing I would like to state, and it really doesn't get to the content of the report. It's sort of beyond that. Interestingly, like some of the comments in the public comment were, so I'm old enough to remember people that got polio and how that disfigured and changed so many lives. I'm old enough barely to remember that when Jonas Salk developed a polio vaccine, everyone took it. It wasn't a political issue. It was a health issue. Yeah, thank God, I was young when I took it. My recollection there is that Salk didn't charge for that. And so when I hear comments, which actually resonated, and with diabetes, I've had over 84,000 injections, so it's not like I'm hesitant to do that, of insulin multiple times a day for 60 years. And I'm acutely aware that it costs about $19 to produce, bottle, and distribute a vial of insulin that costs several $100s at the pharmacy. So given all of that, when I hear what resonates as a bit of something that rings true that I personally am interested in is this whole notion of a pharmacy, tech, media, government. I don't believe there's any conspiracy personally, but I do believe that there's a lot to that, as when profits are so dominant as a motivating force, even in public health where they should not be. And I don't know what our federal government or state governments are paying for these vaccines. It's beyond the purview of Lane County, but I just wanted to call out that I think everyone, contains perspective, has elements of truth, and I think there are elements of truth in that one. I know that does not directly pertain to the task at hand for Lane County Public Health, and I'm delighted that the numbers are looking as they are. And I'm guessing the race against time now is to provide a level of immunity that gets us through a winter, which does not become another winter of discontent. So those are my general comments, but our county administrator has guided me. I was going to give Mr. Adams and Dr. Warren the last word, but I think Commissioner Farr wanted to say something first.
Just a procedural issue, Chair Bernie, and thank you for recognizing me. On the small graphs, we experience small graphs whatever meeting we're in. Sometimes we can ask for larger graphs, sometimes not. I use my ancient iPhone 10 to take a photograph of the small graph and enlarge it to the point where I can see it. It works for me in multiple meetings. So it does work.
I have an iPhone 6. What's this ancient stuff? Thank you very much, Commissioner. Mr. Adams, Dr. Warren, any final thoughts or comments based upon what you heard or what you know is happening out in the field?
I'll start, Chair Bernie. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I do think the public health emergency will wane as hospitalization wanes. I think the public health emergency is really about protecting hospital capacity, and that will change as our total vaccination rates improve, especially among children. I don't think it will improve before the end of this year. So, kind of going into next year, and if we're able to avoid a bad flu season and prevent COVID, and we should be able to protect hospital capacity, then we should have potentially a brighter spring, notwithstanding possible evolution and variants. So that's my hope and wish.
Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Adams?
Chair Bernie, I will close with a pledge to you and the board to bring large graphs from here forward.
And Vice Chair Farr is also pointing out that we can also be left to our own devices, literally. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Adams. Thank you, Dr. Warren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now, for the record, we will now adjourn the joint meeting of the Board of Public Health and the Board of County Commissioners, and we shall reconvene the meeting of the Board of Lane County Commissioners. We are on item 6, consent calendar. Is there a motion? Yes, Vice Chair Farr.
Chair Bernie, I move the consent calendar of October 26, 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Vice Chair Farr has moved and Commissioner Buck has seconded approval of the consent calendar for October 23rd, excuse me, October 26th, 2021. Is there discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, where's the source of the echo? Opposed, same sign. Let the record show that the consent calendar of October 26, 2021, moved for approval by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by Commissioner Buck, has been approved unanimously. We are now on item 7, Health and Human Services. 7A, Order 21-10-26-04, in the matter of accepting a grant award from the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the amount of $3,540,477 for the period 12/1/21 through 6/30/24, delegating authority to the county administrator to execute the award documents and increasing FY 2022 appropriations in the amount of $1,770,238 and adding 1 FTE regular position in the Intergovernmental Human Services Fund number 285 within the Department of Health and Human Services. Ms. Gaffney, you're the one that made me read all of that. You might as well explain what I read. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. I was thinking as you were reading that title that we do not score any points for brevity today on our agenda title. Oftentimes an item like this, which is accepting a grant award, might come before you just on the consent calendar as a routine item. But for this particular item, we wanted to take just a few minutes and lift it up both for the board and for the community, because it really is a tremendous success for our whole community in being able to gain this particular grant award from Housing and Urban Development. And by way of history, I will say that this particular project, which focuses on how to prevent and end youth homelessness, has been literally years in the making. This was our third chance to apply for these grant dollars. And in this case, we were awarded a significant amount of funds. And it's in large part due to our collaboration, not only through the Poverty and Homelessness Board, which is our continuum of care and lead policy body, but the youth task force of the PHB that is also our 15th night youth task force has really set up this project and our community for success in this grant. This particular grant, as the agenda indicates, is an award that goes through 2024, but the first 6 months are set aside for a planning function. And we're excited. We have access, because we are a grantee, to significant technical assistance that's provided through the federal government to help our community identify the particular plan and associated projects that we would want to fund for the balance of the period of time for this grant. So the first 6 months are planning, and that's the FTE, the position we're adding, will help us move that forward, and then we'll submit the specific projects to HUD for approval as part of our plan, and then we have the balance of these funds to actually fund and provide the initiatives in the community. I would be remiss if I didn't specifically thank Vice Chair Farr for his work, not only on the Poverty and Homelessness Board in general, but certainly as an advocate for this project as well. And I am proud, truly proud of the work that's happening out of our anti-poverty programs to focus time, attention, and resources specifically on youth homelessness. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaffney. Any commissioners would like to ask any questions, make any comments on this item? Yes, Vice Chair Farr.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Gaffney, for bringing this forward. It's a pretty significant grant that there are a number of things to say about it. One is that it doesn't supplant any existing county money. This is above and beyond money that the county already dedicates to youth services. And as far as any ongoing programs, I understand, Ms. Gaffney, and correct me if I'm wrong, but anything that goes beyond the term of the grant would be wrapped into our continuum of care through the Poverty and Homelessness Board if it becomes eligible for those funds, which is our ongoing continuum of care. But significantly, I wanted to mention, Ms. Gaffney, that the work that your staff did, in particular with the Youth Homelessness Solutions Work Group in making this happen. We tried 2 times before. This is the 3rd time. That group brought kids to the table who really, I think, maybe pushed this over the edge for this particular grant. That it was actually the writing of the grant was assisted by the people who receive or who represent the folks who receive the grant. So really a superb team effort. And it just makes me proud to just be what I am almost always, and that's an observer of really good people doing really good things, Ms. Gaffney. And that is really what it's all about for me is I get to be a watcher, not a doer. I watch doers do, and that is the best part of my job, I do believe. So I think that in terms of where is the money going to be allocated, I believe that it's true to say that we don't know exactly, that it'll go out through an RFP, and that we have a robust system of existing youth services providers in Lane County, in our nonprofits, and the RFP will be open to the nonprofits. So I'm looking forward to that process. Ms. Gaffney, once again, thank you for bringing this forward. $3.5 million, jump change? No, it's huge. It's enormous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other commissioners that would? Yes, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to congratulate you and the team that put this together. Clearly, 3 tries means that you're persistent, and that persistence paid off. I'm really excited to see how the grant comes to fruition and furthers all the goals and progress that Youth Services has already undertaken. Congrats.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bozievich.
So first I want to say I'm excited about this. I've been promoting the idea of trying to deal with youth homelessness first in our services because it's a leading edge of chronic adult homelessness. And it's such a small portion of our homeless population that it's actually a doable thing to start addressing it in much more immediate fashion. So I'm really happy that we're getting the grant. But at the same time, I just want to provide the board with a little bit of warning that this is obligating, $800,000 of state and local funds for the match, and grants end. And if we start large programs and particularly hire employees through this grant, I've watched our 416 downward departure program that was started under a federal grant now struggle to remain viable and find funding. I've watched multiple other programs that have started under federal grants struggle to remain viable after the grants have run out. We need to be careful how we set up these programs and make sure that either we've thought about how we're going to continue them in the future, or make sure that they are short-term programs, unfortunately, because the danger of getting these large federal grants is what happens when they end, and they do end.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Farr.
And Chair Bernie, I'm prepared for a motion. I will mention that Commissioner Bozievich has some legitimate concern, but much of that is called out in the agenda packet that you see. That we're going into this. I say we. I got to watch people going into this with their eyes open, knowing that that is the case. That that at some point the grants will run out. We have to either find a way to continue it or make sure it is a short-lived cycle on the program that is prescribed. And Ms. Gaffney, I'm going to call out just a couple of names very quickly before I make the motion, if you're ready for the motion, Chair. And that's members of the Youth Homeless Solutions Work Group, which includes Susan Lopez, who's the chair. It also includes, I'll call out a few names that you may know: Kirsten London, formerly with Looking Glass; Chris McAllister, who's the chair of the Poverty and Homelessness Board; Jim Jameson, the former principal of Willamette High School; Matthias Smith, a lived experience youth, a former youth. It's a great committee that brought forward this, put the work in to get the grant written and get it passed, Ms. Gaffney. And if there's anything you wanted to add about that, I would certainly hand you the mic.
Thank you, Chair Bernie and Vice Chair Farr. I appreciate you reading the names, and I do think it's very important to the work that we have people with lived experience and youth in particular who are informing this work. I also would add, in reference to Commissioner Bozievich's caution, yes, always we need to enter into projects with an eye towards sustainability. And as you all know, the work of Health and Human Services over decades has been very much built on leveraging dollars from state and federal government, as well as private nonprofit or foundations, etc. So I think as we enter this work and design the projects, some of them will likely be efforts that can be concluded in the short period of time, but really the important part of this work is identifying how we change systems, and then how do we set up sustainable efforts moving forward. So that absolutely is how we enter into all of these big projects, with that longer term vision in mind. And then I think the last piece I would say is I agree with Commissioner Bozievich's piece around an advantage for focusing on youth is the relatively small numbers that we're talking about. And I think it's similar when we focused on veterans housing, that there was, we can run that list of names and it feels like we can make some significant progress on particular subsets of our homeless population. And so where we can do that with focused resources, I think will be part of our strategy for being successful moving forward.
Before you make the motion, Vice Chair, I'd just like to contribute to the discussion. And that is question, Ms. Gaffney. I'm learning that a lot of this is going to focus on homeless youth. Is that correct?
This entire grant is designed for preventing and ending youth homelessness. So yes.
Thank you. And I remember when I became a commissioner and I read the TAC report did not, and still does not, deal with any of the homeless youth that any of the 16 school districts in Lane County report as homeless to the federal government. Is that correct?
Chair Burney, you are correct. The TAC report focused on chronic homelessness, and so really lifted up the needs related to single adults primarily.
Thank you. So based on that, because I didn't know the answers to those questions, based on that, it certainly seems that there have been a few calls. I think the term refreshing is mild, but on really taking a whole new look at that tax strategy. And if we're getting this resource and it's for youth homelessness, for goodness sakes, isn't this an opportunity for different silos to start working together?
Well, Chair Burney, I appreciate you raising that question. And I will say I have been in lots of conversations, both within county leadership as well as with our partners, about this question of the refresh of the TAC report. What I will say is I think we need to do both things. We clearly have issues around chronic homelessness that need to be addressed in the community. And we have a set of really strong strategies that we know will help move us towards solutions to address the problem of chronic homelessness in the community. And we also need to address other elements of homelessness, like the youth homeless problem in our community. And as Commissioner Farr said, with our third try, we clearly are continuing, while we're doing the work on the TAC report, to also seek resources and supports to address those problems in our community as well. So I believe that homelessness as a community issue, we will all come together and we can address the various aspects of homelessness.
I agree. And I agree it's also an economic structural issue. And that also needs to be looked at in this context, not just trying to mitigate the damage of that structural issue on so many of our most vulnerable. The statement I wanted to make is this, in terms of keeping eyes wide open with soft money, as opposed to hard money. Any money is good. Money's money. I would gladly take a grant, even if it ended, than not take that grant and not deliver services to those that grant enabled service delivery to. Concurrently, even in business, my last business, we sold off pieces of the business that there were other groups interested in taking on and continuing. And there were pieces of my business that are now dormant because nobody was interested, and we were closing down the doors because the president was an old man. So I think that's always the case, whether it's public sector, private sector, doesn't matter. We're always looking to take the resources we can, right, to solve a problem or create an opportunity, and to institutionalize it or systematize it, or ensure when that initial capital injection goes, we can continue the service. So I think that's just sort of like, basic. And I'm delighted that you took 3 swings and you just hit a home run instead of struck out. That may initiate further discussion, but Vice Chair, if you could make the motion, and then we can have that discussion in the context of the motion.
Thank you, Chair Burney. I will make the motion post mentioning that Donna Butera is the McKinney-Vinto liaison for Bethel School District, is a voting member of the Poverty and Homelessness Board, which is a multi-governmental, multi-agency, multi-siloed board with budgetary teeth that works on behalf of the Lane County government. So with that, I would like to move order 21-10-2604 in the matter of adopting a grant award from the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the amount of $3,540,477, the balance of which was stated by Chair Burney at the start of this item.
I will second.
Thank you, and thank you. Order 21-10-26-04. I will not repeat any more, Ms. Gaffney, of that. That's the order number. Has been moved by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by Commissioner Trieger. Is there any discussion, further discussion to the motion? Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add to this discussion, and I'm sure we'll revisit it over and over, but in terms of receiving grant dollars is, you know, there are always, as we know when we look at the budget every year, we anticipate a certain wedge of the revenue pie for every department and division and program to come from grant sources. There are always grant sources, and what's so important about grants is they're specifically designed in many ways to give opportunity to innovate and to learn new things and to track those things in new ways and report back both to the funder but also internally to our own operations and develop new measures of what we call success. So I'm excited that this is a grant. I'm confident that we will have great result from it, that we'll learn from, that will just make us that much more successful in future grant applications, as well as in understanding where and how to allocate other dollars that we have available to us as an organization for this really important work. I will also add that while I'm fully supportive of doing everything we can for our homeless youth as a strategy to prevent future adult homelessness, there are so many more steps as a community that we can be taking to ensure healthy, more stable families to prevent youth homelessness as well. And some of those are out of our purview. A lot of those have to do with literacy rates and early education opportunities, but by and large, a lot of them also have to do with stabilizing families' ability to meet their basic needs like food and shelter. And so I'm really excited for how this one grant fits into the larger puzzle, and fully supportive of us leveraging, as you said, Chair Berney, all dollars, but specifically grants as a very specific strategy for the reasons that I mentioned. Thank you again to the entire team that, as Commissioner Buck said, persisted. Third time's a charm, and I'm really thrilled that we get to do this work.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else before we call for a vote?
Chair Berney, if I may just mention a couple of more youth names that were involved in this.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair. You've had 4 swings. No, go ahead.
I'm beyond my limit, but I'd like to mention Jenna Laver, Julia Johnson, Laura Rodeo, Stacey Yates, and Michaela Elliott for their work on this, on moving this grant forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Anyone else? In that case, I'm sorry. Vice Chair Farr has moved and Commissioner Trieger has seconded Order 21-10-26-04. All those in favor, please signify by saying
Aye.
All those opposed? Let the record show that Order 21-10-26-04 that Ms. Gaffney said would take us 10 minutes had moved by Vice Chair Farr and seconded by Commissioner Trieger has passed unanimously 5 votes to 0. Thank you very much, Ms. Gaffney.
Thank you.
We are now on item 8, Public Works. Order 21-10-26-05 in the matter of approving one Public Works amendment and delegating authority to the county administrator to execute the approved amendment. I'm going to call on Commissioner Buck after I finish reading this. I oppose. Did you notice I saw St. Vincent de Paul? I realized. I'm sorry. For delegating authority to the county administrator to execute the approved amendment for St. Vincent de Paul Society of Lane County, Inc., expense in the amount of $215,000. And before I introduce our speaker, I know Commissioner Buck has a statement.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to declare a conflict of interest. I am related to the Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul, who is part of this contract. So I'll turn my camera off for this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you. And now it's my personal pleasure to introduce Angie Marzano. I am one of her fans. Ms. Marzano, would you walk us through this item?
Good morning, Chair Burney, Board of Commissioners, and County Administrator. Thank you so much for having me. I think this will go pretty quick. We are asking the County Administrator and Board to approve an amendment to increase our current mattress contract with a very trusted, valued nonprofit partner, St. Vincent de Paul, for $215,000 for a contract amount of $653,000. St. Vincent de Paul currently picks up, they screen and process various materials for Lane County Waste Management, mattresses being one of them. Specific to mattresses, they pick up at our Glenwood site. They screen for reuse, which is amazing, reselling mattresses in their retail operation that can't be recycled. And then they pick up from our Glenwood transfer site specifically. These services really are critical to being able to provide cost-effective and sustainable materials management solutions for all residents of Lane County. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Marzano? Well, there's a slam. Oh, no, Vice Chair Farr.
Chair Vernon, just to state that I'm ready, prepared to make a motion when you're ready.
Well, we are more than ready, sir.
Thank you, and thanks, Ms. Marzano. I move Order 21-10-2605 in the matter of approving one Public Works amendment and delegating authority to the County Administrator to execute the approved amendment for St. Vincent de Paul Society of Lane County in the amount of $215,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh, I was hoping I'd have the first time to have the opportunity to say the motion dies for lack of a second. No, that was for Angie. Order 21-10-26-05 has been moved by Commissioner Farr, seconded by Commissioner Trieger. Is there any further discussion to the motion? Oh, yes, Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. And I'll ultimately be voting yes on this motion, but I wanted to take the opportunity of this contract coming before us to maybe issue some concerns that I'm seeing. This is one of many contracts I see coming back for amendment. This amendment's 50% of the original contract. I went back and looked real quick because I've consistently been seeing amendment after amendment to contracts adding up to far greater than the original contract. And I looked at 2 years of data for this particular vendor. And over that 2 years, we have given out $43 million in contracts to this vendor, of which only about 4 million were original contracts. The other 36 million has been amendments or sole source contracts to this vendor. We're getting in a habit at Lane County, it seems, to get very close to some of our vendors where we are consistently issuing contract amendments or sole source determinations and then issuing large sums of money to these contractors. And I'm growing concern about that practice. And I could go through the data, but it's a real concern to me. And I just want to say that, you know, I understand that this is an important service that St. Vincent offers. They do a lot of great work in our community, but $43 million with 90% of that being sole source or amendments is pointing to an issue that I think we need to start handling as a board and maybe talking with our administrator about our discipline around contract and making sure we're being competitive and getting the best, you know, and allowing for open competition for county tax dollars. I brought the similar concerns up when we were consistently just re-upping our contract with Travel Lane County and actually had us go through a competitive process one year, and it completely changed the level of services we were getting and the amount of accountability and reporting we were getting from that particular contractor. So I believe we need to start changing how we do our contracting. and we really need to start thinking carefully about these contract amendments that add 50% is a huge amendment. I've actually got places where we've amended contracts that were 900,000 for this vendor that are now over 2 million. And other contracts that have gone far beyond that. We have to change this practice.
Before I ask, thank you, Commissioner. And before I ask for other commissioners, it looks like Mr. Mokrahysky is on, which usually means he wants to say something.
Well, if Ms. Marzano would like to respond to Commissioner Bozovich's concerns as well, I'd welcome that. But I just make a general comment on Commissioner Bozovich. I think that absolutely, we're always, we do have processes to ensure competitiveness for price and accountability for price. In some circumstances, and Commissioner Bozovich brings up Travel Lane County, which is a good example. We developed a new process there. The challenge we had in that, as exists, I believe, with this contractor is there's really not a lot of competition, right? There's not, to my knowledge, St. Vincent de Paul is sort of the only entity and one of the only nationally that I'm aware of that does this type of mattress recycling program. So it's historically been a partnership between our waste management team that recognized the challenge with mattresses in the landfill and St. Vinny's that had developed the technology and ability to creatively rehabilitate and recycle these waste products, get them out of the waste stream. And so I believe that is a big part of one of the challenges that exists here is that we have limited contractors that are able to do that work. But I'd welcome Ms. Marzano to maybe add any additional comments about the process we go through or questions about competitiveness.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Chair Bozovich, for bringing it up. It's not only a concern for you, it's most certainly a concern for me. I manage all of our solid waste contracts for our entire division, and we're continually seeing prices go up. We're seeing more units, or I'll speak specifically to our relationship with St. Vincent de Paul because you bring up a total amount that I'm unfamiliar with. So specific to solid waste services, St. Vincent de Paul currently for us processes and recycles appliances, mattresses, and that's really the only thing now. And then they're also helping us with our reusables at our site. So at Glenwood, residents can also drop off material that they would have otherwise thrown into our pit, but that they can have a new life at their retail operation. So with every contract, we are sending this out for a full competitive process. Mattresses are regularly one of those materials where we only get one bidder, and that is St. Vincent de Paul. There aren't that many people in the state providing the service, just like there aren't many people providing tire recycling in the state is another problematic material. And we're looking for a solution for appliances because we have no one that can process ammonia, for example, appliances. So this is something we in our division are regularly doing extensive research on to find not only a cost-effective solution, a sustainable solution financially, and what's best for the environment. And I will continue to have that lens as I move forward in management of contracts. Because it's something I take very seriously.
Ms. Marzano, I loved everything you said, but this year I get to be chair. No big deal. Commissioner Trieger, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. I did, and Ms. Marzano somewhat addressed it, and I think we're kind of straying a little bit from discussion to the motion, but I just wanted to say that I appreciate Commissioner Bozovich's concern that he raised about not consolidating contracts and making sure that we have a robust and fair competitive process. But that total number, I'm guessing, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot if our county administrator knows, but I'm guessing when it comes specifically to public works contracts with this particular vendor, the percentage of that total that Commissioner Vozovich put out there, which does seem, pretty eye-popping when you name $43 million, that this is also a vendor that does a lot of other work on the housing and homelessness side and human services side, which of course those are, humans are expensive, and they are at a scale that few, if any, other organizations that work in our community are. And so I just think it's really important to tease that apart when it comes time for us to have this conversation. But for the purposes of this conversation and this motion, my guess is that this vendor is not necessarily seeing a disproportionate number of contracts. And then specifically to the points Ms. Marzano made, there really aren't other options. We do put it out for a competitive process.
In an attempt to move along if possible, even Commissioner Vozovich identified he was probably going to vote for this. He was bringing up another issue. So focusing on this particular order, are there any other items of discussion before we call for a vote? Seeing all those in favor of Order 21-10-26-05, made by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by, I forgot, was it Commissioner Trieger? Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Trieger. Please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Opposed. Let the record show. That I'm echoing. Let the record show that Order 21-10-26-05 was made by Vice Chair, seconded by Commissioner Trieger, approved unanimously. 4-0. Buck. What's the term? Abstain.
Recuse.
Recuse. Thank you, Commissioner.
And I'm sorry, I think Commissioner Vozovich, if you could mute, that will stop the echoing.
I knew someone did that on purpose. Thank you, Commissioner Vozovich. Ms. Marzano, thank you very much. Congratulations. Commissioner Buck, welcome back. Thank you. We are now on item 9, Human Resources. Discussion, report back on the performance auditor position. Alana Holmes, Shonda Miller, Matt Snyder, please lead us in the discussion.
Chair, Commissioners, Alana Holmes, Chief Human Resources Officer. With me today, I have both Shonda Miller, Chair of the Performance Audit Committee, and Matt Snyder, Vice Chair of the Performance Audit Committee. We were asked to report back on the Performance Auditor position. I think that was a specific ask for the Performance Audit Committee to provide an update to the board and then engage in a discussion on, the board's interest and next steps, possible next steps. As you know, we've met on this topic several times over the last couple of years, and so appreciate the chair and the vice chair of the committee being here today to provide you with an update. Once they've completed their comments, I might have a few things to add, and then we look forward to a conversation with the board. So at this point, I will turn it over to Ms. Miller.
Chair Burney, Commissioners, good to be with you today. First, can you see the screen that I'm sharing, or?
Yes, we can. If it starts with Commissioners, please consider ...
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I am here on behalf of the Performance Audit Committee, and we'd like to thank you for this time today. I'm here to talk about the Lane County Performance Auditor position, why it's important, what the role can do for Lane County, and how we can get where we need to be with this role. So first, yes, please consider, in January of this year, there was a fraud embezzlement case in Lane County. The office manager of Lynn County's Planning and Building Department was arrested for not depositing cash payments over 8 years to the tune of $235,000. And the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners report that 16% of all fraud cases are in government organizations, with a median loss of $100,000 and an average loss of $1.8 million. Of all Oregon counties with a major metropolitan area, Lane County is only one of two without a filled performance auditor position. Thinking of the broad scope of Lane County operations, what is the likelihood of possible mismanagement when without someone tasked to keep an eye on things? So also just want to mention that of the counties that have a performance auditor, the budget for that office is typically less than 0.2% of the total county budget. Also, when the county enjoys a high-performing workforce, such as Lane County does, that is stretched to their limit based on current conditions, would you willingly forego the opportunity for one employee dedicated to and skilled at finding cost-saving efficiencies? So why is it important to have a performance auditor? A performance auditor can reasonably assure issues are detected and corrected. They are the eyes and ears of the commission on the front lines. And a performance auditor becomes a trusted partner of management when their engagements provide a second pair of eyes, a fresh perspective on a subject, and time and effort beyond a department's budget to identify least cost improvements and mitigate risks. I watched some of the budget committee deliberations this past spring, and budget committee member Christopher Hazen asked the question, how do we figure out, are we getting more bang for the buck? What's working and what's not working? So the audit committee would like to share with you how the performance auditor role is designed to answer this question objectively by comparing criteria to facts, identifying and addressing risks, and adding value. Also, this past spring, the board had a robust discussion on land use permit backlogs. A seasoned performance auditor can map out the process, identify bottlenecks and reasons for delays, and recommend improvements. The performance auditor role is defined in the Lane Manual, and it's defined based on a professional organization certification called the Certified Internal Auditor, as designated by the Institute of Internal Auditors. The performance auditor is expected to function according to a set of auditing standards, such as generally accepted government auditing standards developed and used by the U.S. Government Accountability Office. So why is this important? The term performance audits are defined by generally accepted government auditing standards, but to prevent confusion, a performance auditor is a certified internal auditor because of the broad range of coverage that this certification encompasses. Internal auditors, as the name implies, have an inward focus across the enterprise, in contrast to external auditors that limit their audits to financial statement attestation. Unlike external auditors or external consultants, the subjects audited by internal auditors are unlimited, covering the range of risk in an entity, including financial risk, legal compliance risk, operational risk, reputation, public relations risk, and human safety. There are generally three types of audits that internal auditors perform, or performance auditors perform across the range of risk. One is assurance audits that reasonably assure the objective of a department or program is met appropriately. Compliance audits, consulting engagements, and then also internal internal auditors conduct confidential investigations triggered by tips of perceived fraud, waste, and abuse reported from the public or from employees. So how can the performance auditor do all of that? Both the generally accepted government auditing standards and the Institute of Internal Auditors auditing standards outline a methodical approach. There are also structural elements to the design of this role that are critically necessary to meet the aspirations of the profession. And they include: 1, reporting to an executive board independent of management. 2, an entity-wide risk assessment conducted collaboratively with management that drives the audit work. 3, individual audits are defined by time budgets. 4, expectations for timely reporting are set. 5, performance metrics for the auditor drive evaluations of the auditor and help conform to the audit schedule. And finally, 6, action plans agreed upon by management to improve operations and or mitigate risk have due dates where follow-up audits are performed to assure the fix is working as intended. Now I'm going to talk about how critical structural elements work. So first, I mentioned the eyes and ears of the commission on the front lines, and that is because auditors have unlimited access to information and people at all levels and are not subject to reprisal by management for looking at a specific area or issue. By the way, I want to mention unlimited access to information and people does not mean having staff do the work for the auditor. It means staff are reasonably available to answer questions and provide access to information, such as access to a data management system in read-only and the ability to extract data. And then, of course, providing training to the auditor as needed so that the auditor is able to work within the data system and learn how to extract the data that they need. So that's instead of asking staff to pull data for them. And then also reporting outside of management purview is invaluable to executive boards and to management because people naturally avoid relaying dissenting opinions, negative information, or even bad news to someone who they report to. And then entity-wide risk assessments make sure the most critical risks get audited first. The risk assessment process prevents spending limited resources on less important things. 3, the world learned what can go wrong when auditors are in bed with management, when Arthur Andersen famously went out of business during the Enron scandal. Hired consultants will meet the client's expectations by construct and have no avenue to elevate matters of concern outside of the contract managers. Some Lane County business line leaders have reported having contracted out performance auditing in certain subjects, making the case that this can substitute for the performance auditor. However, without objective entity risk assessment to support the decision, a subjective selection of an audit may have cost an opportunity to audit an area in more critical need of a closer look. However, I do want to say it is appropriate for business lines to outsource a consulting engagement when they want experts in a particular area to review a subject for best practices and benchmarking, even when there is a performance auditor in place, since that results in recommendations for improvement rather than program objective assurance, compliance assurance, or risk mitigation. Okay, and then 4th, seasoned auditors know they have only a limited time to get to what is important in any given subject or audit. So time budgets for executing and reporting on audits support the performance auditor in this challenging setting. When field work is over and it is time to report, an auditor often does not have all of the information that would provide total assurance, resulting in describing their results as reasonable assurance, and why collaborating with management in arriving at feasible risk mitigation action plans is necessary. Okay, quickly, 4 additional value points for having performance auditors. 1 is fraud detection and prevention. 2, promote high ethical behavior as the auditor makes the rounds throughout the county and encouraging employees to report. When you see something, say something. 3, entity perspective. So auditors provide vision of emerging risks to the county, and the role's unique positioning and access exposure to the scope of operations allows them to develop a sense of emerging risks that contributes to strategic planning. And then 4th, it increases the credibility of Lane County in the eyes of the public trust, taxpayers, and bondholders. So just briefly, the performance auditor role history at Lane County. Since the performance auditor role was brought back and enhanced in 2015, the county has enjoyed a complete turnaround from the state of the county prior to 2015 or 2014, and is operating as efficiently and effectively as ever, especially in the 1.5 years of unprecedented and demanding circumstances with the pandemic and the Holiday Farm Fire. And I must say the county is very, very fortunate to have the leadership of Mr. Mokrajewski and his team. Also wanted to mention that the last performance auditor, when they resigned in 2019, and this person conducted 1 audit, and management reported that the audit noticeably disrupted business cycles unnecessarily. And it is unclear whether that audit met generally accepted government auditing standards or whether it resulted in any meaningful improvements. And then, of course, after the last auditor left, the commissioners understandably have not taken action to recruit for a replacement. And the Performance Audit Committee knew that we had homework to do to evaluate what happened, devise an action plan to reestablish the intent and performance of the role. And so the Performance Audit Committee identified recommendations for strengthening the oversight of the performance auditor position, and you can find these in the 2020 annual report to the board. The Performance Audit Committee also found that the job description of the performance auditor lacked some higher order skill sets, and the salary range and position level wasn't high enough to attract the level of leadership and business savvy that this unique role requires. The audit committee submitted recommendations for updating the role description, position classification, and salary range to the board in a memo dated August 20th, 2020. These recommendations will aid in securing a seasoned performance auditor. When a seasoned performance auditor is hired and critical structural elements are in place, the performance auditor becomes a highly valued member of the county executive leadership team with the objective of becoming a trusted partner. We, the Performance Audit Committee, urge the Commission to make haste in approving the recruitment of this role for all of the reasons presented. And if the board approves the recruitment of the performance auditor, we propose these changes. Minimum qualifications for the county performance auditor should include 5 years of progressively responsible experience in government performance auditing. The county performance auditor should have a unique county auditor classification instead of the current program manager classification. And compensation for the county performance auditor should be competitive with other government performance auditor positions within the state of Oregon. And I'd like to note that there are many staff level performance audit positions in Oregon with higher salary ranges than the current Lane County performance auditor salary range. And that August 2020 memo that I mentioned goes into more detail on how these proposed changes would allow Lane County to attract and place the caliber of performance auditor necessary to meet the aspirations of the role and the expectations of the county. And I believe when Chief Human Resources Officer Alana Holmes presents, she'll provide more information on possible recruiting processes and other strategies. And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else, Mr. Snyder, or is it time for board commissioners to ask questions or make statements?
Chair Bernie, commissioners, if I may, I'm happy to hold the areas that I was going to discuss and just, either chime in later or come back towards the end of your conversation in the areas that I was, just going to highlight around if, depending on the decision of the board, if there's a recruitment or not. There are several things that, I'd like to go into a little bit of detail about with you.
And forgive me, Ms. Holmes, if there's anything you'd like to add now, please do before commissioners ask questions. It's entirely up to you.
So some of the things as you think through the discussion you'll have and the questions you might ask would include if there is a recruitment, the timing of such a recruitment, and I can speak to some of what that could look like later, whether that's a recruitment that's done by the organization, by our talent acquisitions team, or if there's a recruitment firm. I've heard that there's been some discussion about possibly utilizing a firm. I would want to talk a little bit about considerations there. And then again, as the packet outlines, I would seek some direction from the board regarding the classification and market updates. We did provide one to you all last summer. It's or actually the summer of 2020. So we would want to update market. However, we had already proposed an increase in the classification per that review. So I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I already see two hands. Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. First, I just want to appreciate not only Ms. Miller, and while we didn't hear from Mr. Snyder, him for joining us this morning, and really the whole committee, and Commissioner Farr as our liaison to that committee. To me, this is one of the great examples of what our advisory boards and committees are for, that they're a topic-specific content expertise group that can really dig in and do some work and then summarize and bring it back to us in a digestible way to make consideration. And I'm noting this is a discussion item and it may take several discussions or a work session. But what I want to express about this particular topic and this position, really appreciate the committee's focusing on the considerations that we should take in terms of professionalism, criteria, and qualifications to ensure we have a successful match should we move forward with posting and filling this position. But also them including that we shouldn't fill the position unless we find someone who meets those criteria and qualifications, assuming this board agrees that those are the right criteria. That's really important. I also think it's really excellent that we're considering this at a time when the organization is healthy and not at a time where we're reacting or responding to crisis. I think it helps create the right climate for that person to step into this role should we bring them on, and for the general public to better understand that this is not an aha or a gotcha, or this person comes on board to try to find the problems, but rather this person comes on board to try to help us identify what we're doing well and where we could do it even better or more effectively or efficiently. I do think, again, because this is just discussion, there's lots of opportunity. It's going to be iterative. And because we're entering into strategic planning, and because we've, in the current year's budget, added new positions, particularly around data analytics and our equity work, that I will want us to have more information about how we're doing on hiring those positions and how those would impact, influence, or interact with the work of an auditor. So I think for me personally, incorporating this conversation, carrying it forward and including it in our strategic planning and understanding how, once we establish our new plan and our goals, a position like this would help us meet them would be a really good and right way to have more conversation, ultimately arrive at a decision and a timeline for bringing this position back on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I want to apologize to Vice Chair Farr. His hand also was up at the same time, and he is our liaison to this group. So with my apology, Vice Chair Farr.
Actually, Chair Bernie, thank you very much. I appreciate the timing on that, because Commissioner Trigger gave the newest commissioners look at the performance auditor position. And I think that's very valuable, Commissioner Trigger. Thank you for giving us that view, because you really pointed out some very succinct and important items of information. What we are inching toward, and we continue to inch toward, is instructions to our Human Resource Department to advertise for the position and to fill a position. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of, ever so tiny bit of history regarding the position. As Ms. Miller, the current chair of the committee, pointed out, the last auditor who resigned in September 2019, conducted one audit. And if you look at the historical agenda that we had regarding audits, that one audit was actually prescribed by the first auditor, which was coincidentally, not coincidentally, but it was actually Ms. Miller was our first performance auditor. And that one audit was a recruiting and retention audit. Looked fairly simple, and on the outline of process for the auditor, it was just a routine item. It became much larger, and as has been pointed out, it soured a lot of our departments regarding the amount of work that went into that audit. Just one single audit provided by the performance auditor. I'd like to point out audits that occurred before that were really instrumental in actually helping the departments. But before I do that, I'd like to point out this, that a performance auditor is not, as Commissioner Trigger pointed out, got you. A performance auditor is a trusted member of the management team. The performance audits provide valuable information that otherwise may go unnoticed by the departments because of their ongoing and everyday work. And that did happen with each audit that Ms. Miller, the first auditor, provided to us. All those audits are available for review. I'll point out one in particular. Actually, I'm going to point out two. The first one I'll mention is the Sheriff's Department audit, which Ms. Miller provided an in-depth analysis of the Sheriff's Department. The draft was in place, and she actually reviewed the draft with the then Sheriff Byron Trapp and adjusted the report based upon input by Sheriff Trapp. Sheriff Trapp ultimately was very satisfied with the report and used it to help the LCSO implement some new standards and new processes that really have lived into the future. Another one I'll point out is the Lane County Financial Indicators audit in March 2016. Not going to go into too much depth on it. It is available. It's about a 12-page audit given by Ms. Miller, and it really provides graphics, illustrations, and direction regarding financial indicators for the county. So what happened before the second performance auditor was hired and subsequently completed the work that he did, was a series of audits that were very well received by staff, by management, and used in a very positive fashion by Lane County. I'm not going to go beyond that very much further, other than to say this: the decision point that we are moving toward, I don't know that we're at that decision point today, we may be, is do we advertise for a performance auditor? A performance auditor, once again, is not a position that goes out and catches people doing things wrong. By and large, they do something that we love to do: catch people doing things right and helping them to address things that may come to light during the process of catching people doing things right. The Audit Committee's recommendations for the future include a series of recommendations, monthly meetings, monthly updates, quarterly updates to the Board of County Commissioners, and significantly requirements for the position of the performance auditor, requirements for the successful candidate. So with that, a lot of that information is contained in today's packet. We need to talk about what the performance auditor has been historically, what it initially was, what it evolved into, and what we could potentially expect from the Office of Performance Auditor for the future. This is one of only 3 positions that we directly supervise. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Chair Bernie. I'd love to hear what the rest of the board has to say, but the decision point we're moving toward is, do we advertise for a performance auditor?
I will follow Vice Chair's lead and see if other commissioners would like to provide input at this point. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Since becoming commissioner, we have only had a performance auditor for roughly 9 months. And we got that 1 year-long report, which was quite big and quite extensive. But we also knew that we had a laundry list of other audits that were waiting in the queue that need to be done and probably still need to be done. Also knowing that some of our grants require these kinds of audits to be done in order to remain, be able to actually fulfill the administrative requirements of those grants. I've felt and have felt for some time that this is a key role for the county. And we were starting to discuss this recruitment process when, of course, the pandemic hit and everything else came across our desk. That was really tough to be able to concentrate on this particular item through that time period. And now that we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel, I think this is a good time that we consider rehiring. I'm very supportive of the recommendations that you read today, as well as that are in our packet. I would like to see the county move forward and eventually get a performance auditor hired, and do also agree that it does really need to be a good fit and have some expectations that we need a certain amount of audits per year to get through just a huge backload of audits that we know need to be done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bozovic, do you have anything on this?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to make sure the public understands some of the initial part of this discussion was about potential fraud and waste in government and discussions of other episodes in other counties. I just want to say that I have a lot of trust in our finance department and in our individual departments that they are meeting the requirements of various grant reporting, that they are carrying out the internal controls that they're supposed to be carrying out. And we have a lot in place in the way of risk management to protect against some of those issues. So I just, wanted to assure the general public that it's not, the fact that we don't have a performance auditor does not mean that we don't have audits happening, and we don't have, financial audits, that is, and that we're not reconciling accounts and not, taking care to make sure there isn't fraud or waste. So I just want to put that out there. That all said, I do believe this is a really important position for the county to have filled, because it does something that I think is very important in government. And I addressed briefly my concerns about some of our contracting practices. It addresses, our ability to make processes better and to become more efficient, and to, and roadmap those and address risk at the county. So I really, supported the position before. My only concern is it's another employee directly to the board. And I think we demonstrated a couple of weeks ago some really poor management of employees by this board. My only concern is having another employee that reports directly to the board, and whether or not we can successfully manage that employee. That all said, I will support moving forward with the recruitment process, because I do think it is a critical position. I just hope that we can manage, that we as a board can better manage our employees than we have shown recently.
Well, we're not having a vote here on anything. This is just a discussion item, but I'm going to weigh in, and I'm going to be on the minority of this. Ever since I became a commissioner, Ms. Miller, you've been talking to me, and I've been hearing the same rationale for why you feel a performance auditor is necessary after leaving the position, because you had other things to do, which is fine. As Commissioner Buck, only for a few months was there a performance auditor at the county when I've been commissioner, and it was a complete distraction for me. That was my personal experience. I think that this is probably a very valuable position to have at the right time, and I think this is the wrong time. Without a performance auditor, this county has done an unbelievable job dealing with incident commands for the twin crises of COVID and wildfire containment, and then rebuilding. My understanding is that for the last 8 years that this administration has been in place, we have not had a performance auditor. Nonetheless, people have stepped up. Our staff has gotten thin compared to the work required. And if anything, our financial ranking by Moody's and others has gone up. So I think that there will come a point where I would support this position. I think right now, as a value proposition, it actually, and even as Commissioner Bozovich mentioned, we're involved in some uncertainties now regarding one of our employees. So, you can only manage so much at a time. And it's my opinion that I will not support this at this time. But as we move beyond some of these current needs, I might be more open to it. But I've yet been persuaded, for what it's worth. And I understand I'm in the minority on this one. And I say that with all due respect and with all humility. So, since this is a discussion item, are there other people that want to contribute, or are we through this particular item? And what? Yeah, yes, Mr. Snyder, please.
Thank you, Chair Bernie, board members, guests. I wanted to respond to Commissioner Trieger. And when she asked how this position would interact with some new employees that are coming on. When you think about a performance audit, there's 3 E's that is the number one priority: economy, efficiency, effectiveness. That's what your performance auditor is looking for. But we can expand that list, and they have over the recent years, to include environment, equity, and ethics. So these 6 E's are really what your performance auditor is looking for, and equity is right there in the mix with all of them. So it really would be a partner in quality with some of these countywide initiatives on equity. Having a performance auditor conduct a risk assessment, they reach out to their supervisor, which is the Board of County Commissioners, their partners, management, and the staff at the county, compile all the risks and whatever everyone has their ideas for what the risks are, and they get prioritized, ranked, and the performance auditor looks for those areas. So in that risk assessment for the county, it would be easy to prioritize some of the current initiatives. So I think it really is a good partner with some of these initiatives that you were mentioning earlier. And I think that was the only question I heard from the commissioners, but thanks for the opportunity to present. And we're really supportive of hiring this position, and hope that we can convince you that this is the right time, because what we don't want to fall into is the Lake Wobegon effect of everyone here is, or Garrison Keeler had, in Lake Wobegon said all the children are above average. Well, we know that can't possibly be true because that's not how math works. Having an independent performance auditor helping the county find economic efficiencies, operational efficiencies, makes a lot of sense. And thanks for your time.
And Mr. Snyder, if I may, thanks for your time. Yours has been volunteer time, correct? Along with other. Yes.
I've gotten a lot out of it too.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Holmes, did you have your hand up?
Chair Bernie, thank you. Commissioners. So listening to the conversation, I guess I would want to take us back to a few items that will be helpful for me to hear that could possibly help start carving us to some kind of a framework. It sounded like overall there was widespread interest. I kept hearing like moving forward, or we may not be there yet, but we may be getting closer towards that. And so for me, in my function and the team that I lead, you know, one of the things in the package was consideration for what's an optimum, I'm calling it the optimum time to recruit, right? Because there's, you know, we can recruit immediately, we can recruit, you know, over a range of months, but it's really just for your consideration and helpful for me to start hearing what you all are thinking about as far as an optimum time. And are you looking to us to lead this recruitment? I believe the last recruitment was also done by our talent acquisition team. There are other options if those are areas that you would want to explore. We don't necessarily have to talk about all of those today. I could bring those back. And then with respect to the classification of the position, again, attached was a recommendation of an increase at a higher level of a classification. And before you on the screen is information presented by the Performance Audit Committee on compensation. And you know, class and comp is within one of our programmatic areas of expertise in HR. And we do have process that we utilize across the county. And one of the things all of you are very familiar with from different conversations we've had is our comparables that we use. We have our 5 county comps. So that's part of the structure. And depending on the timeline that you put before us, I would want us to be able to go back and look at the market and see what's changed since we've even looked at it in the past year, and you know, go forward with starting to just put a little bit more together on a potential job description based on the feedback from the Performance Audit Committee and some of the edits we had already begun to make to lift it up to a little bit of a higher level classification. So those are just some of the things that would be helpful to hear from you.
Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of moving us along and answering those specific questions, and thank you for asking specific questions, because I think there's a lot we could be discussing. And so I will just circle back to my initial comments and give a little more specific input into timing, because I think some of those other issues that you just mentioned, Ms. Holmes, might be putting the cart before the horse, and I'd hate to have staff do work and then later have it be moot. So I will just note again, we have tentatively scheduled to begin our strategic planning process the 1st of December. I was about to say next month. It's almost next month. I can't believe it. It's almost November. And so soon we'll be saying next month when we mean December. And I really do think that starting at that bigger level of strategic planning and then understanding where and how this position fits in with what we identify we want to achieve through our strategic plan, again, how it fits in given these other new positions that have been created for the current fiscal year around data analytics and expanding our equity team, and given how the budget development process will align in terms of timing with our strategic planning. So for me, just to throw it out there as sort of a straw person, as they say, to think about this conversation being part of our strategic planning and tentatively with an eye toward building in this position into the 22-23 budget. is a proposed timeline. It sounds far away, but really what we're talking about, given our break and all the things coming up and holidays and so on, it's, it's about a 6-month process then that we'd be talking about planning for a recruitment strategy and building it into the budget, or at least seeing some proposals from our administrator about where and how it would fit.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners? Commissioner, yes, Vice Chair Farr.
Thank you, Chair Bernie, and thanks for this ongoing discussion. I really like the thought of wrapping this into the strategic planning discussion, because it really is a part of the strategy as we move ahead as for this Board of County Commissioners. Significantly, before we, Ms. Holmes, before we move forward with the recruitment, it would be a good idea to know what salary range we are going to put on the recruitment notice. We've not quite determined that yet. And Mr. Mokrahajski, you're with us in this conversation. I believe the performance auditor position continues to be budgeted at its existent level. Is that correct? It's been in the budget, just not a full position.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's not specifically a discussion for the budget committee. It's already there, other than there may be a minor, what is minor in terms of the overall budget adjustment to the salary. Minor in terms of the overall budget, pretty significant as far as who do we recruit and who do we attract in our recruiting efforts. Quite frankly, before we offered the position to Dr. Creer, we did offer the position to an auditor with the Secretary of State's Audit Division, and he had gone through the audit process, looked to be a perfect fit for the position, but determined that the financial element was not adequate for him to move from Salem, only from Salem to Eugene to accept the position. Consequently, we didn't get any auditors who had this correct set of skills or a similar set of skills to our first performance auditor. So, Ms. Holmes, before we do recruit for this position, we need to determine how much are we going to offer for the position, what grade does that position actually occupy inside of Lane County's management structure, and really more specifically, how is the board going to support the performance auditor once in position? Now we have two employees that we supervise right now. One is the county administrator, very highly defined position, very highly defined role, and very highly defined interaction with the Board of County Commissioners. The second is county counsel. Once again, very highly defined position and very highly defined interaction process with the Board of County Commissioners. The interaction process of the performance auditor never fully evolved beyond Ms. Miller when Ms. Miller performed the job. Ms. Miller was in an office directly below mine, and I talked to Ms. Miller at least twice a week, quite often every single day as she performed the audits. I think without that kind of close interaction between the entire Board of County Commissioners and the performance auditor, we're setting the position up for failure. And that is essentially what happened, is that we lacked oversight and lacked the ability to control the audit that took place. It really soured the entire organization. So I think if Ms. Holmes, before we do give you instructions to list the job and to put our talent acquisition team in place, I think we need to give you a little bit more to work with, a little bit more to attract somebody who potentially could be successful in this role. And so we have work ahead of us. I appreciate and enjoy hearing Commissioner Trieger talk about it going into the strategic discussion, planning discussion that we're going to have in December, because this really is core and integral to the way we operate as the Board of County Commissioners. Do we fill this position or do we not? And if we don't fill this position, how does the void that is left by not having an auditor of any kind, by relying on the administrator to perform the audits, which is not adequately, superbly done. I mean, Mr. Mokrahajski can tell you of the audits that he has performed, that staff has performed, and the progress has been made in the departments based on those audits. That being said, Commissioner Buck, you're interested in moving forward with the position, maybe not exactly as it's been performed, but that position can be a valuable position for the Board of County Commissioners and for the county in general. So that being said, I briefly would say, let's push it into the strategic planning discussion that we begin in December. And Ms. Holmes, I will delay on, my input is that we will delay on giving you the instructions to move out to advertise the job until we give you a little bit more to work with, until we give you a package that really is going to be attractive to the ultimate hire. Thank you, Chair Bernie.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Well, I was going to say something, but I'll hold Commissioner Buck. No,
Go ahead, Chair.
Are you sure? Because
yeah, you haven't had a chance to speak yet. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Well, at least in this round.
And I think you're going to promptly dismiss it. I want to say that we've not yet agreed we're even going for this position. So what I heard Commissioner Trieger say, which I would agree isn't exactly the same as the Vice Chair. I heard Commissioner Trieger say strategic planning should precede, and then within budget, perhaps this then becomes a reality. I don't want to put Mr. Moker-Heisey, you can completely say not appropriate, but I feel like we're discussing a management position within the county. You are the manager of county operations. And I just wanted to ask whether you see this as something that would be of value or necessary or your perspective. But again, you do not have to answer if you don't choose to. But I just see this as so integral to the work that you've been overseeing for this county and the capacity you've put in place with different departments. As I'm trying to come to a yes, but I certainly am not there.
What I would say is I think the position, there are pros and cons, as with most things. I've worked in organizations that both have public, in county governments in different states that have both had performance auditor functions and those that have not. I think that there certainly are we all want to see checks and balances. We want to make sure that we have an environment that is free of fraud, waste, and abuse, and that if there is any fraud, waste, or abuse, that is quickly reported and handled. I think we do have a process here, and it's one of the things that was set up after the board went through, challenges in the last decade with the organization, was making sure that we have a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline, so that continues. I think having a performance auditors is a best practice. I think I appreciate the board's consideration of the practical matters. We have had struggles in this organization with that function, and challenges that have been created at the management level in terms of workload and time that actually staff have to spend pulling information together and responding to. So I think it's good for the board to be mindful. I appreciate the comments about the timing of when it's right to sort of have conversation. We are in a good position in this organization right now, and so I think it's a good time for the board to be contemplating what you want to see. And I think what I would caution and advise is just be very clear. If you're going to go for this position, be very clear about what you as the board want to achieve out of this function, and then the level of accountability that the board will have in managing that function. Just as you are accountable for managing the county administrator and the county council, there's also a really important role in managing this function.
Thank you, and I'm done. So Commissioner Buck, that was very kind of you, please.
I appreciate the conversation. I had a question for Ms. Holmes, which was, if we choose to move forward, is there a compelling reason not to use talent acquisition within the office for recruitment? Because you said there was another option of hiring a firm that would do that on our behalf, which I imagine there's some expense, but I was curious what you felt as a reason or reasons to choose one over the other.
Chair Bernie, Commissioner Buck, thank you for that question. In my opinion, we have a lot of talent sitting in our talent acquisition team who is really good at outreach and doing a great job with recruitments overall. So I would start with that. I think just some fair considerations, and, you know, I think hearing that we may, you know, look at this over some months. We know what the labor market is like right now. It is pretty tough. And we've seen some success when we do recruitments, and others that, you know, we might have to go out more than once. That's just the reality with the labor shortage that, you know, it's not unique just to us, but across the country. I know we're all aware of that. The reason that I mentioned the option of a recruitment firm was because that was my understanding. That was the interest of the Performance Audit Committee, and I want to, you know, respect that that is their interest. And if that is the direction that the board would want to go in, you know, I would want to just talk to you more about all there's process that we would need to go through regarding selecting a firm. There's timeline considerations, you know, just different things like that. So I don't know that answers your question. It's just really, I think, a different perspective. And as you know, right now, we are currently actively recruiting several high-level positions, and then there are firms involved with some of those, and there are different firms that that we're managing and helping as they do the outreach for candidates. That includes some of the ones that were mentioned earlier today, including the data analytics position and the equity manager role as well.
Commissioner Buck, did you have anything else?
No, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify the comments of my intention around where the strategic plan and the decision about whether to move forward, and if so, what that timeline looks like. And our county administrator expressed it really well, is to be very clear about what we want to get out of this position. And that's why I think it belongs in our strategic planning process, because then it will dovetail with what is it we're stating we're trying to achieve, and how will this position help us do that, or will this position help us do that? And if so, how? And that's why I think it belongs as part of that conversation. And I also think because that is going to be an opportunity where we're maybe a little less time constrained, and we have some facilitation in having the conversation, so that it can also fold in the personnel supervisory management elements of how we as a body work together to effectively support the very few direct reports that we have. So I just think that is a really good, that will be a good process and a good place to have this conversation in a way that brings us to maybe a little more of a consensus as a group about whether to fill the position, if so, why, and on what kind of timeline.
We are now at, well, let me just say, we're now at the hour time slotted for this, but please, Mr. Snyder, for you, we will give you all the time you want.
All the time. Oh boy.
Yeah, all of it.
I won't, all the time in the world for internal audit. Thank you, Chair Bernie. To Commissioner Buck's question on a recruiting firm, when we are advocating for the position, we wanted to explore every avenue. So we did look at some recruiting firms regionally, and they charge 25% of the person's salary that they place. And the specific one that I was talking to that also placed the chief audit director at the Oregon Department of Transportation, they guarantee their placements for 90 days. Just to give you guys information.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. I was going to wrap up, but please, Mr. Mokrahysky.
I know the strategic plan is, I'll be brief. The strategic plan has been brought up. Really appreciate that desire, and I agree that, you know, as this whole strategic planning effort is really looking forward, right? It's kind of setting these big picture priorities and goals on behalf of the board for where you want to go in the next 3 years. So I do think that that's a great time to be incorporating this conversation about, okay, you know, where are we headed? What are our big picture priorities and goals? You know, where does a performance auditor potentially fit into that work? We are scheduling, we have tentatively scheduled a work session with the board on December 1st. So that's just about a little over 30 days away. We are up and running. We have a news release and email going out to our employees. We're going to be doing surveys and all of that. And so over the I would say by the end of December and into January, we should have had a few conversations with the board and have a pretty good feeling about what your priorities and goals are going to be going forward.
If I read this board and this discussion correctly, at this point in time, since this is the discussion item, what this discussion has led to is that this will be integrated into our strategic planning discussion to see how this position does not further enhance that, and then action can be taken. And there's no reason to do anything until that occurs. Do I have the temperature correct for this body in this discussion? If so, thank you so much, Ms. Miller, Mr. Snyder, Ms. Holmes. To be continued, but it sounds like it's coming to a head sooner or later. Thank you very much.
If we can be of any assistance in helping to prepare for the strategic planning session, please feel free to reach out to the committee. All of us would love to participate.
That's very kind of you, and I know Commissioner Farr is a very strong advocate of the recommendation of the committee, and he will be in constant touch with this body as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we are now on item 10A, County Council. Mr. Dingle, anything? Are you here?
Chair Bernie, I believe council had no announcements.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, we were Ms. Jones and I were in our so wise planning, thinking we would have executive session this morning, but we are not going to have executive session this morning. There's simply not time. We will have the executive session as indicated in the afternoon agenda, but we do have time for county administration. Order 21-10-26-01 in the matter of recommending a Lane County Commissioner to the Board of Directors of the Association of Oregon Counties for the 2-year position reserved for member counties with populations of 250,000 or more beginning January 1, 2022. It's been my pleasure to fill that role for the last 2 years. I know Mr. Kyler is here to discuss this item with us. Mr. Kyler, just letting you know, we can't hear you. We could take a stretch break. I'm just kidding. I think when Mr. Kyler comes back, I'm going to assume he will have sound. Commissioner Buck, do you remember the olden days when we met in Harris Hall and you were suggesting a 10 a.m. stretch break?
I do. We spend long hours sitting down in front of the screen or when we're in Harris Hall.
I just was going to offer, and I'm not, if Mr. Kyler's not able to make his, because I know we're right up at the noon hour here, if he's not able to get his technology working, I believe that we can take that item up this afternoon. I'll coordinate with Mr. Rickoff and Mr. Kyler to make sure that we come back to you. Just, you know, if it's...
I am back if you can
hear me. Back. Okay, great.
Sorry, I did the old re-log in trick. Apparently does work. Apologies, am I going to continue?
No, we're shutting you down. I'm sorry. Yes, please continue.
Okay, Chair Bernie and Commissioners, I'm Alex Kyler. I'm Lane County Intergovernmental Relations Manager. I think you have in front of you a board memo and a packet that does describe the issue at hand. As Commissioner Bernie indicated, there is a seat for at the Board of Directors at the Association of Oregon Counties that is specifically designed for counties with a population of over 250,000 people. That seat is open for a period of 2 years, and typically the appointment is actually made by the Association of Oregon Counties after a recommendation from the Board of Commissioners in those particular counties, and typically is part of the annual conference of the Association of Oregon Counties, which is upcoming. So this is a little bit out of queue with your normal appointments that typically happen at that first meeting or second meeting in January. And we needed to get this item in front of you. So you have a board order that has a blank for the appointment. And my job was just to sort of introduce this issue and ask that you identify the member that amongst your from the Lane County Board of Commissioners that would serve in that role as the director for a county of 250,000, of a county with a population of over 250,000. I think that sums up my presentation, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Commissioners? Commissioner Buck?
Quick question, Chair. Are you still interested in this particular seat?
I have enjoyed participating on that board. I've actually helped construct an initiative which will be occurring soon, which has to do with bringing up to $1 billion to create housing in Oregon and opportunity zones across the state. I think it's a great group of people. So I would be absolutely happy to, if that was the will of the board, and I would be equally happy to allow someone else to have that opportunity. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. Chair Bernie, as you already now, as the district vice chair, have an alternate position on the board also, I'd like to nominate Vice Chair Pat Farr to be our representative to the board for counties larger than 250,000.
I would second that with the chairs. I mean, it's indicated an interest in potentially.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Krieger. You're echoing a lot, Commissioner Bozovich. Last time that was your. Commissioner Krieger, could you say that again? I'm sorry.
Thank you. I was going to say that I would be happy to second the nomination for Vice Chair Farr to be our representative. And then we can have the discussion, because I'm also just aware of if you had interest in continuing on, but as Commissioner Bozovich pointed out, also have a role with the organization as the delegate vice chair. So I will second the nomination as the short hand raise, and then we can have the conversation.
Commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Vice Chair Farr.
Yeah, I'll accept the nomination with a proviso that that would then have 2 Lane County Commissioners as members of that board, and I think that would be valuable.
Oh, if
I currently serve as co-chair of the Veterans Committee. Have served that for a number of years, and I'm fairly active in. For instance, I have 2 presentations in the upcoming conference in Lane County. So I would love to serve on that board.
If I may, Commissioner Bozovich, I think you're incorrect. An alternate is not a member of the board. And the commissioner is going to be the person that's on the board from our district. Just FYI.
Could you repeat that last sentence or two? I couldn't hear with the echo.
Commissioner Bozovich, I merely pointed out that, as an alternate from our district to the board, I would not be on the board. I would only be there if the president of our district group was not, and she usually is. That's all. Just FYI. Commissioner Bozovich, I presume you were going to say something because I know you turned your mic on.
Thank you. And I have no idea why I'm getting echoes this time because I've never had that before and I haven't changed any settings. So
it's your provider.
Yeah, so it's fascinating that it's happening this time. But I just want to say, yeah, I've been vice chair of the district before. You attend the meetings, whether you have a vote or not, sometimes depends on whether or not the district chair shows up or not. But you know, you are invited to all the board meetings, are able to participate on conversations. You just may not have a vote when it comes to the actual vote. One of the things about having the vice chair, I know he's been extremely involved in AOC over the years, and also it would the opportunity if Zan does not show up, we actually then end up with 2 votes on the board of directors. If you're our appointment and Zan doesn't show up, we still just have 1 vote. And that's one of my reasonings behind having that, is our ability to protect our votes. It doesn't hurt your ability to participate with the board and participate in conversations. So that was my logic.
Any other commissioners? Because at this point in time, we have 1 nomination with a second, and that's what we got. Commissioner Buck.
I just want to say I'd support either of you on this committee. You know, you'd both be well positioned, and I know that you would both do well. You know, I'd vote for either of you to be on it. I guess I just wanted to be able to ask the chair how much you still want it to be on it.
I think I would like to be on it, an equal amount as the vice chair would like to be on it. And so we just need to make a decision. This, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? This is not a big deal, but it reminds me when I first took over as chair, if you recall, it became this big issue of vice chair, and nobody was anticipating it. And there were and then the very next day there was an insurrection, and everything sort of, you know, got put in a different frame. So I have an absolute interest, but I certainly won't live or die one way or the other. And I know Vice Chair Farr had his hand up.
Thanks, Chair Bernie. And then I will defer to status quo. You know, we do have an option of an at-large position, which I could pursue. And I appreciate the nomination. I am highly interested in being a part of the board. I can attend the meetings, but I will defer to status quo.
Are you sure, Vice Chair? Unless someone wants to say, oh, Commissioner Bozovich, if I hear an echo, that means you want to talk.
Sorry, I need to start waiting till you recognize me to hit that button.
That's okay.
Yeah, I would just say if Commissioner Farr wants to revert to status quo, I'd be willing to withdraw my nomination if the second's also willing.
Vice Chair Farr, that's very considerate of you, and it's appreciated. And either way, I would have been fine. I just want you to know that, sir. Like Commissioner Buck, I would have voted for either of us. Mr. Kyler, do you have what you need from this discussion?
There is an order.
We need to vote?
We actually need a new motion if Commissioner Bozovich is withdrawing his motion.
Got it. We need, well, Commissioner Farr, do you have your hand up? No.
Yes. For a motion.
Please.
Then I would like to move order 21-10-2601 in the matter of recommending Commissioner Joe Burney to the Board of Directors of the Association of Oregon Counties for the 2-year position reserved for member counties with populations of 250,000 or more beginning January 1st, 2022.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Order 21-10-26-01 has been moved by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by Commissioner Buck in the matter of recommending that Joe Burney serve as the Lane County Commissioner to the Board of Directors to the AOC for a 2-year position, etc. All those in favor, is there discussion to the motion? Commissioner Buck.
I'll just say that this is similar to what we did in our district meetings where everybody basically just stayed in their own positions for a variety of reasons. It sounds like many folks are doing that around the counties. But I also want to recognize that was very gracious of you, Commissioner Farr, and I know that this will come up again yearly and would support you in that position in the future as well.
I think, if I may, I believe Commissioner Bozovich was going to correct you and say this will come up every other year. Am I right, Commissioner Bozovich?
2-year term.
I would like to echo appreciation of the graciousness, Commissioner Farr. Is there any other discussion to this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the order as read signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Let the record show that order 21-10-26-01 with everything filled out, made by Vice Chair Farr, seconded by Commissioner Buck, has been approved unanimously, 5 votes to 0. Thank you very much, Mr. Kyler, for joining us, leaving us, and rejoining us. Thank you. We are now at County Administration B announcements.
Thank you, Chair. Just a really quick reminder that Mo Young, our former equity coordinator who's moved to public health, is still assisting in coordinating our land acknowledgement training. And so there are 3 dates and 2 commissioners have responded. So just for any commissioners that have not had an opportunity to respond, to sign up for one of the 3 90-minute training sessions, they are on either November 10th, November 18th, or December 2nd. And so just want to remind commissioners to sign up for that land acknowledgement training by responding to Mo. And I'll stop there, Chair. If I have anything urgent this afternoon, I'll let you know, but I know we're into the noon hour, so we'll go ahead and be ready for your break.
If we're ready for our break, commissioners, without further ado, let's break. We will reconvene at 1:30. Thank you all.